10 years ago, a young adventurer named Jade rushed into the guild to grab some quests, only for her eyes to land on the bulletin board and find the job requests anything but what she expected. The moment he laid eyes on the blue-haired receptionist, our Garnet, his heart flipped, and Jade knew it was love at first sight, so he jumped into her romantic adventure quest and boldly confessed his feelings to her. The tale picked up with Jade's first shaky steps as a brand new novice. He grinned like he'd just won the lottery after putting down a lone slime in the forest, and as a fresh budding flower rank adventurer, he celebrated his win like it was the start of something huge. This move pushed him one step closer to his dream of becoming a legendary adventurer. To pull this off, Jade had to hunt down deadly monsters, grab their moonstones, and lug back their lifeless ether bodies, because that's what lets adventurers stamp a blooming flower mark onto their hands and finally learn where they stand among the four classes: Support, Guardian, Attacker, and Enhancer. Jade strutted around proud in the flowerbud rank, until he finally noticed the moonstones had tiny cracks, and his reward suddenly shrank way below what he'd been promised. Still, this brutal setback only lit a fire under Jade's heart. He clenched his resolve and promised he'd rise higher, becoming the greatest hero and adventurer the world would ever see. Jade, the capital city's guild adventurer, hunted down the receptionist to cash in his reward for the mana stones he'd snagged from open window number 18. When Garnet's enchanting face lit up in front of him, the shy little boy's cheeks flared red. He froze on the spot, staring in shock at her captivating features that pulled everyone's attention the second she appeared. As a young adventurer, he couldn't help but soak up Garnet's adorable outfit and stunning look. Then he finally clocked the name on her chest and learned the girl's name at last, exactly the way Jade should have figured it out by now. As his love for Garnet burned brighter than ever. Still, her silent glare hit like a warning, and the receptionist nervously asked if anything was wrong. Yet the real shock came when he finally heard Garnet's angelic voice, especially after the gemstone's price had been cut in half. Jade threw his own dreams to the side and pushed toward becoming the greatest adventurer, eyes locked on Garnet, aching for the moment they'd finally talk again. Jade snatched up yet another quest straight off the Adventurers Guild planner, chasing bigger rewards than ever. After wrapping up that mission, he inched even closer to his crush, Garnet. Garnet clung to Jade's mind as he charged through one deadly mission after another, somehow pulling off everything, until the kid finally grew up year by year. 10 years had slammed by since Jade first locked eyes with Garnet. The stone golem barreled after the two adventurers, closing in fast until their lives were hanging by a thread. They unleashed every last ounce of their strength, supercharged by magical buffs, to blast the giant monster straight into oblivion. But it didn't shake a single thing. Nothing it did could damage it or bring it down. The top-ranked parent adventurers snagged the 7th spot, and even then they had to hold back harder thanks to their supporting crew, so they bolted for their lives and barely escaped that terrifying near-death encounter. The rock golem burst apart in an explosive blast right in front of them. The girl could only guess it was her grandfather pulling some secret trick, anything other than the truth of what was really happening. Turns out the adventurer Jade, ranked 10th, had already arrived, and she saved them at the last second by cutting down the giant golem. Both of them froze because the legendary adventurer, ranked at the very top, was right here. Turns out Jade didn't come for glory at all. He just wanted to take down the monster. And the clues screamed Garnet's influence, especially when Jade smashed the golem to bits by hurling a stone instead of touching the precious blade Garnet had given him. That 7th-ranked adventurer convinced himself it was all self-discipline, but we both know the real reason he chose that path. After all that, he pressed the country's sword into the new owner's hands, and on the ride back to the capital, Jade couldn't ignore the sting of her crush's presence. Then Jade leaned in and told that curious girl, "Keep chasing it. If you want to get stronger, your parents are right." Love's power blindsided Jade, and it made him stagger. How did she know the real reason? Turns out the 7th-ranked adventurer didn't mean love in some mushy romance. He was talking about loving people and bringing peace, not sweeping the receptionist off her feet. Finally, Jade burst into the Royal Capital Guild Hall, dragging a huge monolith that left the adventurers staring in pure awe, and they couldn't stop admiring this young man. They said he was a selfless hero, but when he stepped up, he chose the regular counter instead of the special one meant for top-tier adventurers, right behind their backs. Jade went red with embarrassment, her nerves screaming. Back then, he waited his turn, and when the moment to speak finally arrived, he refused to let fear steal the floor. Jade lived for one thing, locking eyes with Garnet and stealing all her attention like it was her whole reason for breathing. In a full-on panic, Jade thrust the monolith at the receptionist, blurted his name, and let Garnet tear into the miracle material, while the golem conquest pounded through his mind. Jade practically buzzed with excitement, spinning in circles as he kept repeating, "I'm falling in love." He seized the moment to stare at the girl he loved, stewing with envy like a jealous knife, while wishing he could be the one Garnet was staring at. The receptionist shut her eyes and studied the manna stone from every angle, and the way she did it was pure magic, like a beautiful moment that made the adventurer's heart tumble headfirst into love. When the inspection finally wrapped up, Garnet's reluctance cranked to max. She still handed over a check for 50 million, and the moment hit like a gut punch. Jade hated having to say goodbye and let the moment slip away, but he refused to keep pressing the receptionist, because he still dreamed this thing between them would one day feel normal. One day, Jade finally got his quest reward, and right when it counted, he managed to brush the girl's finger by pure luck. Keeping a straight poker face as he locked eyes with her, his scream snapping between pure joy and crushing disappointment, because it all ended way too fast. Even though Jade swore he'd never cash it, the check somehow showed up framed inside his house. Yet just before all that, the heroes got one more mission: repeat the whole thing, hoping it would somehow forge them into real friends someday. With that thought burning in her head, Jade stormed out of the Adventurers Guild and raced toward her mission, completely clueless that Garnet was replaying their last romantic moment just as intensely. Meanwhile, two villagers out in the far corner of the kingdom huddled together, talking up the plea for help against a beast that was terrorizing their home, fully convinced the adventurers would finally ride in and save them. Not far from them, a little girl clutching vegetables slumped with worry as soon as she heard the news. That beast conquest power felt downright terrifying. Jade and everyone had no clue the very same village held his next quest, and Jade had no idea what he'd have to do to finish it yet, with the townspeople's praise for the adventurers left out. He told Jade to rest and enjoy his company. Then, right away, Jade politely refused, because meeting Garnet was her #1 priority, and a terrified girl rushed in to warn her. The nightmare wasn't finished yet. Because the dragon still prowled nearby and snatched her vegetables right out from under her nose, the middle-aged man blurted a rushed apology, convinced it was all just the girl's childish imagination. But Jade took one look at this and demanded answers. She grabbed the girl and pressed her, asking which way she'd seen the dragon. The second Jade got the news, he told the villagers he'd sweep the area himself, hunting for any sign of the beast, and then he reassured them, "Don't worry, I'll handle this, no extra trouble." That's just the price of being an adventurer. The moment night drops, your journey begins. Jade finally gets a thought brewing, and starts to wonder if that dragon might just be a harmless herbivore in disguise, until a terrifying voice snaps, "Don't take another step," and shuts his theory down instantly. And just leave that tempting food alone, because one wrong bite sparks rage and brings trouble. Still, Jade marches straight toward the voice. And before he can even catch his breath, he bursts in, only to find a tiny kid in ragged clothes, not the brutal winged monster he swore was coming. Jade can't shake the feeling that a lonely little girl has no business being here of all places, until the voices from before slam back into his head, and he realizes she might be one of those rare dragons that can turn into a human, only this time. It's not a monster anymore. Jade can't shake the thought, if she's really meant to lead the dragons, then he has to prove it by threatening to devour her whole. Jade knows she'd choke if that happened, so he throws out another question to figure out why this kid is wearing a human body. Turns out she's terrified of going back to her true form and ending up as nothing, just some lowly nobody. At least this buys her a few days of survival, thanks to those stolen vegetables. Even the famous human hero can't stop himself. Shock slams into him, and sadness hits hard at the girl's heartbreaking condition. Turns out, when Jade shifts into a dragon, she still can't go hunting for meat, because once word spreads that an adventurer, here, the evil people who chase them will swarm and force her to fight monsters and dragons instead. So yeah, Jade finally agrees. That kid only snaps back into her beast form just to steal vegetables. But that question threw the girl into full-blown worry, because it meant the adventurers already knew she was here, and they could come crashing in anytime, fast or slow, who knew. Still, she prayed Jade was human and could rescue her from those conquerors, until the young man finally explained that one of the adventurers was taking way too long, so long the little dragon had to pause, letting the shocking info sink in. And then it hit her hard. She snapped into a scream of pure terror when she understood the truth. The guy standing in front of her was the kind of terrifying adventurer you don't forget once you've seen him. So she bolted in circles, panic tearing through her heart. But lucky for Jade, she didn't land a hit, and that close call snapped the tension and finally let her breathe easy. Jade leaned in and asked, "Are you really a white dragon?" Because this country was protecting her like it was fate. Jade was one of those kids who had to take action the moment another species questioned her, so the child bolted outside to prove she was a white dragon, while Jade rushed after her and yanked her back before she could strip. Instead, she blew Jade away by revealing her real, enchanting form. His gaze proved it, purity and mystique burned in both of them, and this kid's eyes told the truth. That vegetable thief wasn't some random monster at all. It was a white dragon wearing disguise and ready to slip into the lowest places. So they stepped into the house, where Jade pulled the child close and taught them the real history of her kind, heroes who'd protected their country for ages, while showing off his sword, carved with a dragon symbol to honor her people. Jade urged her to meet the king and beg for protection, and the nameless girls latched onto the plan, so the very next day, they marched straight to the castle kingdom. The moment the journey began, the child couldn't contain their excitement, practically bursting with energy. But the moment they stepped up to the king's throne room door, nerves slammed into them like a wave. Then both of them finally stepped inside and came face to face with the king of the Sundale Kingdom, who thought Jade had come to accept his offer and take the throne as the next successor, only for that to miss the real problem, because Jade had something else in tow. The child he brought with him. He let her swagger in and call herself a harmless, smart, independent white dragon, one who can dress and feed herself, because of course this nobody still snagged the top spot for the whole stiff, awkward self-introduction. But we can forgive him because when the king recognized his country's debt to Jade and the white dragon, he didn't just bow, he showed real gratitude. Even so, the trouble didn't vanish, because the king couldn't just let the little dragon run wild through the capital, and the non-stop supervision made the child tremble with anxiety. Jade made the choice. She refused to leave the sad girl by herself. So she stepped up and took full charge of the child, and when the king promised protection, the whole nightmare finally blew over. Then they quietly pocketed some vegetables and slipped out of the castle. Then the nameless girl grabbed Jade's hands and thanked her for stepping up to be her guardian. And that's when Jade started wondering what she'd even name the kid, but now the nameless little one was handing her the honor of choosing her name. The adventurer tossed out the name Doromi, and that grin lit up the white dragon, who happily accepted it. She kept practicing that name for herself, but the moment they showed up at the Adventurers Guild, Doromi's excitement crashed through the floor. That dragon was so pure evil he nodded and agreed to stay out there the moment it was asked, while Jade headed straight to the receptionist to report. Even after everything, Doromi couldn't shake the uneasy look on the rogue adventurers' faces. He fired a quick glance at Jade from the outside window, tense that her guardian could be lurking nearby, because if this dragon was warning of danger, it meant trouble was coming. That bittersweet rush hit him hard, especially as Doromi watched Jade chat with Garnet, grinning so wide it looked like she'd slipped back into being a kid again. Of course, that gorgeous receptionist had them completely hooked. And that stunning face made the little girl wonder if the feared Adventurers Guild might actually be kind of safe after all. After Jade wrapped up her report, it was finally time to head home. Then Darom learned her guardian still hadn't done it, so they crashed back to their place about a year later. She was practically consumed with one mission, meeting Garnet, so Jade swore she'd start coming home much more often now. He guided Doromi back to her house and soaked in every bit of the scenery along the way until they finally pulled up at their destination. But with Jade's lights rarely on, the woman beside him couldn't help but wonder if Doromi was really home this time. A few minutes ago, Doromi leaned in and told Jade that his opinion of the Adventurers Guild he owned flipped for the better, because Jade looked genuinely happy. But after they walked out, Doromi didn't catch the real twist. The only reason Jade looked that beautiful was the receptionist. With the hero lost in his own imagination, still clutching that beautiful memory of Garnet, Doromi couldn't wait for it for a second, because they weren't at Jade's place yet, and they had to make sure they were staring at the right glittering house on the corner. The moment those windows, and even that roof, came into view, you could feel the warmth of a real home in them, and they both surged with excitement, ready to step in before disaster ever struck. That flicker hit like a light bulb, Jade's message, aimed straight at Garnet, and for the moment it all clicked. They were finally about to live together. And honestly, this guy was thinking 1,000 steps ahead, like he'd already mapped out the main characters before an anime even started. Carpenters figured the heart was all about Jade's love for the people, but forget the other wrong ideas. Now let's smash the question aside and head straight into the lover's house. From the hallway to the bathroom and right into the bedroom, the white dragon never failed to leave everyone stunned. So he kept driving his tour forward until they finally reached the walk-in closet, and that's when things turned weird. Doromi didn't even realize it, but he'd already pushed the sweet girl over the edge. Inside were 28 outfits and wedding dresses, all picked from Jade's favorites because he still had one dream in mind. Someday, after all of this, he'd get someone to wear them. He dressed in clothes meant for his beloved crush, only he wasn't her legal wife at all, because the little girl pushed for a meeting, eager to say thank you for letting her stay here. Jade snapped into silence at last, realizing her clothes, those women's dresses, were disgustingly degenerate. Garnet didn't have that kind of relationship in his life. He wasn't married, not dating, and not even friends with her. But he couldn't bring himself to confess to Doromi that he had fallen for the receptionist guild leader, so Jade swept in, invited the little dragon to a meal to chase away his hunger and keep the surprise search from stealing his focus. After his bath, Doromi dashed back to Jade and practically burst with excitement, telling him he couldn't wait to crash on a soft bed right after dinner. Like a hero who couldn't wait to dive onto it, grab Garnet's hand, and finally share the same bed, chasing the pure joy of married life. Jade couldn't wait to chase more quests, but dinner hit first, so the two of them bolted out together right at the same time. Jade still remembered that sweet old couple next door, and the neighbors did exactly what they used to. But when he looked up, there she was, the guild receptionist, right in that same familiar face. Seeing the woman he'd been dreaming about, Jade froze in shock. Their eyes shone with pure love and deep admiration for Garnet. Right in the middle of everything, a tiny twist hit hard. Jade didn't see it coming when he realized the girl was actually the woman next door, and his thoughts spiraled into chaos as he scrambled to steady himself and introduce himself. In the end, Doromi swooped in and beat him to it. While he casually greeted Garnet, she just got a warm good night from the receptionist. Jade spotted the perfect opening to talk outside work, but when she tried to say good evening, stuttering fear hijacked her tongue and she couldn't finish. It was the first time she ever saw Garnet dressed casually, and it hit her like a shock. Jade's mind got snagged by Garnet's jaw-dropping look as the receptionist, but luckily she snapped out of the spell before it swallowed her whole. And at last he tipped his head and told her good night. Right there, their romance started to bloom, and Jade couldn't stop daydreaming about marriage even if it was only a fantasy. To everyone's shock, Garnet actually felt a wave of relief after talking to Jade, like the receptionist wasn't just working, but wanted to talk to her too. Turns out Garnet didn't come for trouble at all. She only wanted to meet them as their new neighbor. Meanwhile, Jade's heart sank and her stomach growled, begging for a juicy piece of meat. But since Garnet wouldn't stop asking questions, Jade finally spilled their names side by side, then acted like they were siblings just to cover up the truth. Jade already knew Garnet recognized her, and that truth hit her like pure joy. This night became the happiest of her life. Turns out Garnet always asked for Jade's name because of company policy, so it still wasn't a reason to dodge thanking her. Finally, all the words drained out of him. Jade volunteered to carry Garnet's bag, then nearly froze when she heard it was packed with her underwear. Luckily, Jade wasn't trying to be lewd, even as they kept closing the distance. After she learned Garnet was headed to a public bath, Jade pinned everything on Doromi, begging her to pull the neighbors over to their place for a proper bath. That weak little dragon, knocked around by a Japanese ray blast, somehow managed to scare a lesson into everyone, reminding the guild receptionist to tread carefully, and it totally crushed Jade's dream of impressing the woman he liked. But still, Jade was satisfied just watching Garnet's back. Right up until the moment he blurted out his love by accident, Jade froze in panic, because the white dragon had caught on. Then Doromi stepped in, told him not to be mortified, since she loved him back too and had no reason to hide it. It was like a puppy adoring its owner, pure, unstoppable, and way too real to be ashamed of. Doromi told Jade to hand Garnet a bouquet of flowers, guessing gardening was the receptionist's thing, because Garnet looked oddly grounded and a little too low. With the dragon's advice lighting the way, Jade instantly pictured Garnet exploding with pure joy from the bouquet he handed her. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Weeks later, the two of them trekked across the empty plains under the cover of night. Jade didn't just win, she took down the Scorpion King too, and now today they're diving into a whole new quest. They were almost there, but the prize waited in a brand new location. A colossal world tree towers at the very top of a jagged cliff, looming over everything. Doromi couldn't shake the thought that their target might be someone's castle, but deep down they knew that was a long shot, because the real mission was clear. They were here to hunt down a star flower, which the flower shop owner swore was the best gift after they'd been interviewing him over the past 2 weeks. Turns out the gift only bloomed at the world tree, but there was no way they could slog the normal, long road, especially with Jade breathing impatient fire the whole time. Garnet practically lit up with joy at the gift. The legendary adventurer blasted up the cliff with Doromi clinging to his back, moving so fast the dragon didn't even bother transforming and taking flight. Sudden scream shattered the air, and their attention snapped to it instantly. Jade sprinted toward the world tree with her heart pounding, terrified someone was in trouble and something dangerous was about to strike. Jade told Doromi she was going full speed ahead to slam into the peak way faster than they'd planned. Then they saw two female adventurers fighting for their lives, squaring off against a monstrous earthworm that was crushing their every move. Right before the girls got swallowed, Jade burst in like a storm and kicked the earthworm monster into oblivion. One strike was more than enough to crush any chance of conquest. With the monster finally crushed, both of them broke down in relief, alive, breathing, and they thanked Jade over and over for saving them. Jade shot her fellow adventurers a thankful grin and said, "I found it. I've gathered a star flower right here." After the girls slammed it into place as a defensive wall, it shielded them from the monsters and kept that late-blooming flower safe too. It felt like their wildest dream just became real, and excitedly waved at the legendary hero, who'd finally managed to secure the starflower pot as a gift. Of course, even the disaster couldn't help but take notice of their guardian. Jade's gift hit them like a spark, and both of them burst with pure joy. On the walk home, a flower started to bloom, and it lit their hearts up so hard they couldn't wait to run back and pour their love onto Garnet, until they spotted the starflower already withered, and the joy on their faces vanished in seconds. Jade felt like she was one step away from heaven from pure shock and stress, but Doromi snapped her back to life, telling the depressed man to pour that hope into the quest and keep it alive with any kind of surprising, relentless effort. Jade had run out of options, so they tried one last desperate move, flooding the flower with encouraging words to lift her spirit, but in the end, it totally fell flat. Doromi gets pushed into suggesting she hand it to Garnet, because she's desperate to believe that their flower-true neighbor can fix this gift back into its original form. Jade mulled it over for a heartbeat, then took their advice and didn't waste a second going. They dashed to the receptionist's place and pounded on the door, only to learn Garnet was still out, so they had to hang around until their neighbor came back. But Jade's anxiety flared again as she stared at her, looking terrifying right in front of her own house. So she practically had to say it 3 times, insisting over and over that she wasn't the scary type. Finally, Garnet showed up and heard that weird declaration from the man, and meanwhile Jade didn't flinch, not even a bit, because she was too busy clocking the receptionist's freshly washed, soaking hair and the way she'd clearly just stepped out of the bathroom. They both apologized for showing up so late, but Jade wouldn't budge. She dug deep, clenched her resolve, and finally reached out to pass the withered star flower to her. Garnet leaned in on the pot, and the moment she saw it, she knew it, an honest-to-goodness star flower. She finally clocked what the woman she liked meant. She wasn't talking to her at all, and Garnet couldn't wrap her head around it. The same fix that saved the starflower could turn this mess around, because once the world tree fed it new nutrients, they'd have to yank the old ones out before this happened again. She apologized for being useless, but Jade snapped to attention. No, she should have been the one saying sorry, not handing over that sad, withered thing. No matter what hit her path, Garnet was still ready to take the gift. Jade figured the flower was safer, and way happier, staying with the guild receptionist for the rest of its life. But Garnet didn't reach for the pot at all. She meant to melt the gift into a marker, so she could keep its natural beauty locked in her memory forever. Jade couldn't hold it in. She erupted in joy and rolled around like the whole world just cheered for her. So she thanked Garnet for pulling meaning out of it, and then she turned to the rest of the flowers, everyone except the receptionist who had better be grateful. Jade had to repeat her words, and suddenly it felt like that flower was pouring out gratitude to Garnet, right through the way it said those words. The receptionist swore she'd cherish the gift and treat it like a priceless keepsake, as if she wouldn't pull the same old stunt again. Jade's cheeks flared with a blush, because she secretly believed that person would be admired one day. Then the night dragged on, and they wrapped up their chat with a handful of goodnight greetings. Garnet ends the whole housewarming with one last heartfelt thank you. Jade's face kept burning red, but the moment still demanded another round, so they both bolted home and Jade didn't just thank Doromi, she made it crystal clear she owed her for pushing her to take this step. So the legendary adventurer could trust the white dragon, and she'd know he could call on her anytime. Jade even lets him prove his gratitude by taking care of the girl and letting her feast on whatever she wants. A brand new heart-shaped constellation starts blooming across the sky, and tonight gets declared a fish day, like the universe is rewarding all his hard-earned emotions. Next morning, Garnet was buried in a book at the Adventurers Guild when her coworker crashed the moment with an abrupt interruption. She tried to tell her blue-haired colleague that her bookmark was hilarious, but when Garnet asked what it was, the woman talked around it and admitted, that she'd made it from a flower someone had given her. Leaving everyone staring, they couldn't stop asking who that mystery person even was. Then Garnet, still thinking about Jade, gave his coworkers a shaky, half-explained answer. She insisted the gift came from her neighbor, without her even knowing. Jade cradled that pot like it was pure treasure, but the receptionist snapped it down fast, calling it nothing more than another pathetic piece for the already degenerate collection. A month later, Jade and Daromi tore to the guild at full speed, racing the clock before sunset. Luckily, they beat the clock like the white dragon demanded, hanging back outside while their guardian slipped in as always. Jade's nerves were screaming, but she steels herself for the exact moment she'd been chasing. He spotted Garnet through the receptionist's window and stopped dead in his tracks. He didn't waste another second. The legendary adventurer shoved the moonstone into his neighbor's hands so she could inspect the loot she'd hauled in from the Chima conquest quest. Suddenly, a savage rumble tore through the young girl's stomach. Then both of them froze when he examined the moonstone, and Jade held her breath, trying to figure out where that sound was coming from. In just a few seconds, she clocked it, her crush, making that hilarious noise, and right on cue, her own growling stomach begged for food. Jade couldn't help but grin at the rare sight of Garnet turning betrayed and looking impossibly adorable, because that accident totally threw her into a full-on embarrassment spiral. Bad news, Jade knew this was a terrible idea the second she saw Jade's partner was starving again, but no matter what she said, she couldn't sweet-talk it away, so the adventurer shoved the plan outside before Garnet's stomach started growling for round two. Just outside the guild, a Doromi stood waiting. Her guardian was already waiting, and the second he saw her, he spilled the news. She just racked up a fresh record of 18 bugs counted, so they celebrated right away by heading out to eat. When they stepped into the restaurant, the place was dead silent. No one else was there besides them. Turns out it had been a whole year since Jade last stepped into this place, so when the owner finally saw the famous hero again, he couldn't help but stare in shock. Meanwhile, Disaster had one thing on its mind: food, and honestly, that was perfect. When she ordered a huge, hearty meat broth, Jade also scooped up a spread of seafood dishes. A few minutes later, the mouth-watering food finally hit the table. And just like that, it was their lucky day, especially for Jade, because that was her very last order. No more waiting, they dove into the food and tore through every bite until they finally felt full and satisfied. Raving about how incredible it tasted, they drifted into memories of that seafood and soup they shared, then lost themselves in their own wild hallucinations about the flavor. When a brand new customer burst in and dropped into the seat right beside Jade, it hit her like a shock. The woman who stepped in was actually the guild's receptionist, and everyone had been waiting on her this whole time. That had the adventurer on edge. Why was Garnet even here at this restaurant? Was it a dinner date with him, like Jade was thinking? Jade caught Garnet slipping in the same order again, and that told her the receptionist wasn't just here by chance. She came here all the time. Jade just had to figure out what her neighbor's food was all about, only to learn it was already gone, because Garnet had been hunting a plate of seafood that finally ran out. Jade didn't mean to, but he still shattered the woman he loved, and in her eyes, that mistake was unforgivable. Jade eagerly carried the fish to be cooked for the owner, only to hand it to Garnet by mistake. Big trouble. The owner snapped that it was a disaster, and suddenly Jade was everyone's problem, stuck doing chores for the restaurant. But Jade wasn't doing this for him. She leaned into the owner and talked them into letting her buy every ingredient herself. Right now, it feels impossible. Supplies are running out fast because vicious monsters are prowling the coastline. Even that notorious white dragon who swiped vegetables still couldn't stand the sea monster, and Jade got hit with the same wall. She marched up to the guild receptionist and demanded to know if there was any conquest mission for that creature. Garnet tells us there's one custom made for rank 6 adventurers. But because Jade was just a low-ranking Jade, she couldn't afford to take that job, and she couldn't sit around waiting for her quest to crawl up to rank 10 either. This would take forever, and that thought hits him hard as Jade starts wondering what would happen if conquest wasn't treated like a Federation mission. If she'd gone fishing at sea, stumbled into the monster by accident, and then wiped it out in self-defense like she said, then yeah, everything would have been fine. He decided to hit the sea, pull in some fresh fish, and make sure it all led somewhere. Garnet finally got to sink his teeth into that mouth-watering seafood he loved. Right after that, Jade and Darom hurried to Jade's villa near the spot where he'd bought the place 2 years earlier for that breathtaking sunset view. Even though she scrubbed the details of Garnet's adoption just to make him fall for her, still, she couldn't ignore the view. And then he was right there with her too. Everything snapped into place, and romance hit full force. They'd kiss like that, straight into the final end of their delusion. But their goal was still sitting there, waiting for them that very day. Jade grabbed the fishing gear she'd picked up before and handed it over so Garnet and their child could finally have a day to enjoy. Jade never even considered that thing could knock a monster flat, because in his head, he'd just go fishing with Doromi and wait until the sea beast finally showed up, so he could snag some ingredients. Then they'll kick back and share a relaxed dinner with Garnet. After that, Jade will go low-key, bragging that he caught the fish and sweet-talking the receptionist to pull them closer, and that's the whole plan for now. After everything, the fishermen finally burst into the harbor, and the whole place seemed to hold its breath. The whole world felt like a heavy, creeping shadow. The whole place felt suffocating, like something monstrous was hiding in the sea, waiting to strike. Somehow, Doromi's the only one who made it out alive. As he told them about their wild transportation mission, yeah, they even had a little boat ready for Garnet too, but let's not rush past all the mix-ups that got us here, and instead watch the sunset light up like it's alive, no more stalling. They've already dropped their lines into the monster expedition, like the hunt is officially underway. A voice cut through the air and slammed the brakes on their plan to reach the sea. Jade spun around and saw a pack of stern men standing in their way, blocking their chance to catch that fish. That guy's restaurant owner told the adventurers, "Don't you dare go," because of what they spotted 15 months ago. Even with the monster looming, Jade pushed the sails on anyway, knowing her little boat would be the Kraken's perfect snack. Time was about to run out, so Jade handed the fisherman his coin purse, booked him a huge ship, and let him use it to punch through his mission. Even though the ship's owner first turned down the tempting offer, everything changed the moment they heard what disaster Jade had survived. After their opinion, the gloom finally lifted from their faces as they pointed to Jade, believing she'd crush the monster. The legendary adventurer shut that down fast. He refused the Fellowship's plea to wipe out the Kren. Since he outranks them, he never backs away. Step in, and he'll defend himself and smash his enemy to the ground. He turns himself into bait with zero expectations, and then, just for their bride, he hauls in the one thing fishermen always pull from the sea, pure, mouth-watering seafood joy. Jade's wild, kind-hearted move leaves middle-aged men stunned, so they gladly hand her the boat for free and even give her money bag back, returning the coins she'd paid the owner. Jade and Doromi sailed straight into the middle of the sea, and for once the water stayed calm, no monsters in sight. The fishermen stay calm and keep fishing, until Jade finally hooks her very first catch. Their win lights a spark in them, and Jade blurts out the idea of a competition, because she refuses to let her guardian grab everything. Lady Luck is totally smiling on Jade. She snags 5 rare white dragonfish, even though they're almost nowhere to be found. They switch fishing spots, convinced their bad luck is tied to where they cast, because the little girl can feel the seafood tug her bait like it's calling her in. Jade grins as the white dragonfish gets hooked, then she hauls it in and savors that sweet taste of victory. But their grin fades fast when they reel in a sea scorpion, one of the toughest creatures in the ocean, built like a tank and powered by raw strength. The dragon reels in shock at the crazy privilege of being human, while Doromi shrieks in pure terror when a sea monster suddenly crashes the scene. Then, panicking, Doromi hurls pebbles at it, trying to scare the thing off. That one hit didn't slow the giant scorpion down, it only fueled its fury until their boat started teetering on the edge of sinking. Jade, still sinking, had already planned for it. She'd powered the whole boat with magic, shattered the monster with free-roaming strikes, and even turned herself into a champion who dragged it down into the deep, grave sea for good if it was still out there. And just like that, the fight wrapped up in a blink. Jade ripped back to the ship unharmed. They toasted their effortless win, and at last the conquest felt like it was over for good, so both of them headed back to the harbor, and Sean flashed a thumbs up from his little dragon, turning into that calm, peaceful fisherman who could finally roam the open sea. Jade practically buzzed with excitement, ready to hand over fresh fish to be cooked into seafood and deliver it straight to Garnet for their romantic scheme, so Doromi and her guardian, starving, marched off to a restaurant. Until Jade suddenly spotted Garnet on the road to their destination. Still stunned, she blurted out to the receptionist with an almost ridiculous amount of energy, so Garnet couldn't help but notice. She blurted that their kid had gone so far that now they could finally talk to their crush with zero trouble. Then she whipped out the fish they'd hauled in and bragged about how they'd even conquered the monster that crashed their fishing trip. Doromi's fishing trip hijacked her whole explanation, and she spilled to Garnet how she bravely hurled a stone at the monster, staying perfectly calm, locking eyes with it, and refusing to back up. By the end, Garnet's love for Jade only burned brighter, because if Jade truly had slain that sea monster, then she had to be the one, so Garnet grabbed her attention and asked, "Will you meet me at the guild tomorrow?" Jade couldn't stop wondering if Garnet actually remembered her promise to hit a mission today, and when she realized, like always, that the receptionist never said a word, her worry shot through the roof. Jade didn't even flinch about being stuck in the guild all day. On the second day, Jade's cheeks flared with a puzzled blush as she couldn't figure out why Garnet was so locked in on keeping her safe. Even with her terrifying strength as a rank 10 adventurer, she still faced what came next. Of course, that wish she made actually came true, so the woman he liked started to worry about her. Unless Jade could feel herself squirming under the receptionist's judgment, Garnet looked at her and saw something totally different. Jade wasn't just the strongest, greatest adventurer. She was the little brother who needed protection, and Jade couldn't help but beam as she asked why Garnet saw her that way, not as family. She figured it out because Garnet had watched him grow ever since he was a 12-year-old adventurer. Jade lit up with pure joy, thanking Doromi and Garnet for treating her like a real normal person, not just some legend among the greatest adventurers, but like a younger brother they'd gladly shield. When Jade finally understood she was Garnet, her brother's child, everything crushed her hopes of ever becoming his lover, and it wrecked her mind and heart in one deadly hit. They weren't siblings in any real way, and if they were, that truth would have detonated their whole relationship anyway. Jade already knew Garnet was headed to the restaurant, so he and Rome pulled her aside and told her to enjoy the fish they'd caught, then they'd hand it over to the owner. Lucky for them, the guild receptionist said yes to their offer, and that sealed the deal for a wild, romantic night out for Jade. Right when he started to savor every second, he couldn't take his eyes off the breathtaking beauty of the woman he liked. He prayed this date would go right, but fate slammed the brakes, because whatever happens now, it stuck with them forever. Everything blew up in just 5 seconds, because the restaurant sat practically around the corner, so Jade's last shot at finally relaxing with Garnet, the old regular, vanished just as fast. When the owner finally showed up, they wasted no time, explaining the fish they'd caught and bragging about how they'd crushed the monster that was choking off seafood production, and the owner just stood there, so grateful he promised to whip up something delicious for Jade, but Jade was left staring like, wait, who are you talking about? Garnet ended up handing the man a thank you flower for that mouth-watering meal, and it was clear that this gift wasn't just some little token, it meant a whole lot more. Jade blurted what's going on, but the adventurer couldn't keep eating there with Garnet anymore, because the owner was shutting the shop for good and heading to the countryside to live with his daughter and her husband. Jade shoved a sack of coins into his hands like a retirement gift, but the owner flat-out refused it, once and for all, right there in the restaurant. Jade then slid in so close to Garnet that their elbows practically pressed together. She started sobbing because the store had shut down. No, it hadn't been closed for long. It had just slammed its doors moments ago, and the heartbreak hit hard. This once-in-a-lifetime chance might be gone for good. Right after they wrapped up eating, a white dragon and its guards burst in, shouting how delicious they tasted. Then Garnet, wearing a sweet little smile, joined them, letting this quick slice of happiness soak in. Right after that, Doromi was out by the Adventurers Guild with her friends, hype still buzzing, as she told everyone about their adventure from today. Jade wiped out the Hydra with a single punch, and somehow she clocked Jade's back as it went down. The kids were blown away by Doromi's tale and begged for an even more epic journey, but right then it all cut off, because Jade finished his report for the guild receptionist. Even though his face crumpled with pure sadness, it felt all but certain that something awful had just gone down. A few minutes before the scene, we slipped back in. Jade and Doromi had just wrapped a high-level mission and were heading to the guild like always. Jade couldn't stop smiling because seeing his lover, the receptionist, made his whole day. She was stunning and bursting with joy now because she finally had their conversation with Garnet locked down as a secret, just like that, and in her head she could already see the day he'd ask her out. Forget standing around and waiting for doom outside. Jade marched to the receptionist's window while she spent her time with other people's kids. Bathed in Garnet glory, the light blazing so bright it practically stole the breath. Garnet's expression had changed from before, and Jade refused to let her nerves win, so she walked right up to her neighbor, introduced herself, and handed her the exact stone Jade loved. Every day they hung out with Garnet, and Jade couldn't stop smiling, pure happiness on her face. But that smile vanished the second the woman coughed, and his worry hit like a brick. He couldn't stop thinking that Garnet might have been dealing with a serious illness this whole time. Even though Jade worried about his neighbor's health, he swallowed the questions and left the guild without a word, so he wouldn't pry and trouble Garnet. It might be their final talk, so we rewind to just a few minutes back, where Doromi spotted her guardian slumped in a deep depression, and shot him a question on the spot: what was going on? The white dragon finally got the full picture. Jade's wild scheme to snag a medicine that could wipe out even the worst illness in an instant. Jade wouldn't just stand there and let someone get hurt in front of her, especially because it was Garnet, the same one we'd been talking about. Doromi threw her full support behind her friend, and they didn't waste a second. Straight to the pharmacy they went. With Jade's $1 billion budget for Garnet's recovery on the table, they set out to track down whoever could craft the exact medicine they needed. Everywhere she turned, eyeballs stared back from the walls, and it was flat out terrifying. Yeah, even if I'm the white-skinned dragon. Jade was screaming at her guardian to haul her out of there right now, because if they didn't, they'd be the next victims. So she swore to the white dragon that with her state protection status, not a single part of her would be touched, but it felt far too soon for that promise to matter. Relief crashed through her the moment he burst in, because that woman stood there, bristling with horror, clutching kitchen utensils that had no business anywhere near cooking. Surin demanded to know who Doromi was, but the moment the question hit, the child panicked so hard she blurted out that her tastes just wouldn't line up with what the woman wanted. And that wasn't nearly enough to make him fear what was coming. Surin had barely finished dissecting monsters for medical reasons when she even dragged Doromi along to watch. All right, I'll do it. Surin scribbled it back into another note, and Jade's face lit up as she realized Surin was someone she'd met before. Back when shopkeeper Coop was the one who taught the girl medical lessons. Surin's not just some bystander, she's the pharmacy owner's granddaughter, and let me tell you, her family runs on strict rules. That's exactly what Jay's chasing, because Coop just might cook up a medicine strong enough to cure her. Surin's receptionist disease hit, and it crashed the plan. Turns out her grandmother had already retired and gone back to the countryside, so Surin couldn't lift a finger, even with those cheap housing prices. Jade couldn't stop replaying it in her head, crushed by the sting of remembering. The coup mixture is perfect, but luckily Surin swoops in, stops the crisis, and whips up medicine as a stand-in for her grandmother. After thinking it through, Jade begged Surin to rescue the receptionist and wrench her out of the agony she'd been trapped in while running the pharmacy. The pharmacist leaned in, telling the great hero not to worry, she'd keep everything safe under her watch. Then Jade spilled every symptom she'd spotted to Surin and pushed him to trace any unwanted over-the-counter drugs, because she was sure this wasn't just a run-of-the-mill cold. But since Surin couldn't get the proof that a serious illness was behind it, she refused to meet Jade's eyes and insisted the special medicine wasn't necessary, until Jade's desperation hit her hard and she reluctantly took the case. One injection later, she was already whipping up a potion meant to crush the cough and fatigue, and Jade and Doromi jumped in too, until they managed to bring the patient a glass of something red. And sure enough, it was tomato juice. The red juice came straight from a dragon, and when the little girl saw it, she screamed like she'd just witnessed a lifeless body, like she'd never be able to shake the shock anytime soon. Bad news soaked the air the moment it happened, but the white dragon still hacked through the pain and kept pushing forward, drained yet determined. A jaw-dropping $30,000 price tag had been slapped on it. The Jade shock hit like lightning. People would have sworn it was theft with her $1 billion budget, but then they actually grabbed the medicine. Jade and Jerome sprinted to Garnet's house and pounded on the door, not even caring if anyone thought they were strange. Right now, recovery was the only thing that mattered. The moment Garnet swung the door open, Jade finally exhaled, because the woman he loved was alive, standing right there in front of him. No beating around the bush, Jade practically shoved the medicine into their hands, coughing hard and worn out, his worry blazing after what he'd seen in Garnet earlier. He stormed back to the guild, stunned by how they reacted. Turns out Garnet was totally fine, no cure needed. Turns out she just grabbed the wrong moment. One fish bone slammed into her throat and she choked. It wasn't some terrifying illness she'd uncovered, just Jade making sure she'd be okay, yet she still apologized for scaring her, because when Jade screamed that he was special, panic was the natural reaction. And he fought tooth and nail to keep going, until she finally blurted it out. At the exact moment it mattered most, fear hit him, so he dug deeper into that special receptionist's statement. He leaned in and told Garnet he was different from everyone else, and his feelings burned just like the day he handed flowers to his favorite restaurant's owner, praising all their hard work. Garnet took the medicine in her hands, not because she was ready to heal yet, but because that young girl looked like she was fighting through pain. Garnet waved Jade and Doromi inside to see her flowers, and the moment she said it, a huge question mark practically burst in Jade's head, because the guy couldn't stop staring, shocked out of his mind an invitation to enter her house from the woman who'd already driven him crazy in love with her. Once the storm in him finally settled, they slipped inside, and Jade got a full look at the reception's living room, breathtaking from the first second, with his stunned expression screaming, "This is pure heaven." But while Jade was lost in a daydream, picturing herself sitting down to eat with Garnet at her own table, Doromi spotted those slightly wilted flowers drooping in a pot. They grabbed both of them and yelled for them to hurry, because lives were on the line. Then they jammed their medicine into the soil and watched the disaster unfold in real time as those dead, withered petals burst into full bloom. So yeah, he was the very first one to throw a celebration for that miracle, and Garnet, she lit up with pure joy. They looked way better now, so she thanked both of them for everything. But right then, Doromi's stomach growled like thunder, tipping the little girl off that she hadn't eaten. Garnet decided it was time for dinner, so she dragged both of them along to hunt for a brand new restaurant to try. And once their favorite spot shut down, boom, her big dream turned into real life. The answer for the great hero was an instant yes, and while the receptionist eyed her smiling a little too suspiciously, Garnet didn't even flinch. She just waved Doromi and Jade out the door. That cheerful kid snapped back with eager excitement, and yeah, it's good, so let's head out, a few unknown days later. Jade chased his own cravings, replaying every magical moment from the last few nights, breaking into Garnet's house, nursing the flowers back to life, and then sealing it all with a cozy dinner shared with Dorom. They were clicking like a dream, yet Jade couldn't shut her eyes at night, drowning in an overload of joy. Jade sensed this nightmare was about to strike again, different reasons, same dread, and then a sudden rumble tore through the air. He snapped his head toward it, using his enhanced hearing to track the source fast. He found out his neighbor was in danger, and Jade tore across the scene to save her, only to collide with a panicked Garnet. She turned to Jade, the 10-ranked adventurer, and begged for help. Everything spiraled into chaos. She even admitted that the scary place they were talking about was her second-floor bedroom. Jade knew in her bones something awful was lurking there, and Garnet's eyes widened. She instantly guessed the culprit was a robber. Jade leaned in to the guild receptionist, promised she'd de-sweep the area, and told her to stay right by her side. Then she barked orders to the disaster to guard Garnet. Jade clenched her resolve, slipped into the room, scanned for the robber, and couldn't stop fretting about how filthy the place was. But there was one brutal clue that screamed Garnet had fought an intruder here, and that kind of crime wasn't something you could just let slide. Jade sped up, scanning the room like a hunter, only to realize it was just them, with nobody else in sight. Garnet still had that gut feeling the intruder was sneaking around, right under her bed. Jade snapped her attention to the area and spotted a creature. Then it bolted before anyone could react, while the adventurer's grip terrified the receptionist into a shocked scream and nonstop trembling. Clinging to the little girl for support, he still stumbled straight into a reliable disaster, then pushed himself forward to reassure his friends that they didn't need to worry, because he was right there with them. That tiny spider-looking culprit doesn't just terrify people, it sparks disasters for wildly different reasons, and when Garnet discovers he's somehow eaten a spider, surprise hits hard, like his stomach goes into panic mode, and there's no way to undo what's already been done. Jade has to crush this threat right now, then he darts out of the way and slips past his strike. He slips into Garnet's real clothes, perfect timing, because now Jade can't grab him through the high barrier. That surprise quest hits her like a spark, tugging at her infatuated clothes, no matter how Jade insists on proving her bravery against spiders. So she shuts her eyes and clamps one hand around his entire body, and darts to the window to get rid of the perpetrator. Sadly, Jade's beloved wife's place ends way messier than she expects. She got a little too fired up and accidentally wrecked Garnet's bed, but the receptionist shrugs it off like it's nothing, however. He even pulled out a thank you and told the amazing adventurer, "You're my hero tonight." Telling him that good news still hadn't dried up, our child's best praise was still coming from the girl next door. They'd waited too long. There was no way they were getting a new bed now. And Jade wouldn't let Garnet crash in one of the wrecked bunks, because a midnight accident could blow everything up, so she straight up offered her own bed, and Garnet was over the moon until, at last, he called two great friends from the friend zone. But for Jade, every single step hauled her closer to her ultimate mission, finally making her move and asking the receptionist out. So she hurried back home with that expensive bed, then rushed it to Garnet's place in just minutes, because once the woman saw how insanely luxurious it was, she couldn't just take it lightly. Then disaster swooped in, swapping the bed instead, an insane setup that felt like the perfect shot at ranking the top 10 adventurers. In the end, Garnet finally nodded and accepted the White Dragon's offer, and the shocking part is, it never should have gone that far before they split that night. Jade promised her neighbor she'd sprint to his side the second another spider showed up. Garnet trusted her completely, and the young man carrying the bed on his back soaked up every bright moment, while Jade bubbled over with happy tears as he rolled it along on the ride home. Finally, he shoved everything into his own room and just stared in shock, because Garnet's bed was right there inside his house. After just a few panels, Jade finally inhaled that blanket's scent for the first time, and then caught the sweet aroma of the woman he liked. It made him picture Garnet's arms around him, and for a moment, he drifted into these gorgeous dreams. Until this teenage boy finally snapped to the truth. Everything after that spiraled downhill in his head, yet Jade didn't look even remotely rested, because Garnet apparently wouldn't let her sleep a wink. I went the rest according to your imagination. Meanwhile, in a bustling city, a young girl named Marin was about to change everything. She was heading for the capital, charging toward the start of her quest to become the next legend, an adventurer unlike any hero the world had ever seen. Jade spilled the story of her sleepy Dorami adventure, right as she complained that today's quest dragged them all the way into the morning. And they had to stand there and wait for the train before they could finally head back to the capital. Right in the middle of a growing yawn, Jade caught the girl locked on them for ages, and before the silence could stretch, she blurted, "Do you need something?" Out of nowhere, they asked Marin if they could peek down at their own feet, which a low dragon fired back by kicking off her shoes first. The would-be adventurer only wanted to peek under the seat, but her face sank the moment she found nothing there for her. Turns out Marin dropped her wallet, and boom, everything was gone. She got left with 0 coins to her name, no way to buy a single thing. Even though it was only day 2 of her adventure, Jade trudged forward with a heavy, serious stride, caught between shock and non-stop worry. Then she discovered Marin was headed straight for the capital's Adventurer Guild, so her very first quest was about to be stamped and issued right there. Jade's smile snapped on the second she heard it, because this beginner's first quest threw her right back to the day she started, too. Soon enough, Jade finally cracked Marin's whole details, her name and her age. Marin was almost 12, just one step from being allowed to register as an adventurer. Then Jade grinned and said she'd buy the train tickets for her, like a punishment. Marin's story still had a shot of hope. Her road wasn't done yet, even after she burned through every last coin, because the would-be adventurer refused to let her fall that hard. So they cut a deal. She'd pay it back using her future earnings, and with those terms, there was no suffocating pressure weighing on her. Marin snapped up Jade's offer, thanked her with a bright smile, and then dashed inside to train for the ride to the capital. They'd still be trekking all the way to sunset, but somehow this little girl didn't worry about sleeping arrangements at all. It looked like they'd be fine. When she told Jade this, her sister turned out to be living in the capital too. She worked the guild front desk, backing the Peak Blossom, and Jade even hinted it might be the same Marin. Support was the rarest job of them all, but when the odds shifted, support climbed from second-rate to the top slot, becoming the most common role overnight. Sure, rare was probably always part of the picture, but Marin stepped up to be a support like Jade, because deep down she was chasing the dream of becoming an amazing adventurer, just like her. Jade's words pointed to someone who genuinely blew everyone's mind. But Marin beamed way too brightly as she asked both of them, "Have you ever met Jade?" even though sleepiness already weighed on her. Durrami didn't even pause. He just blurted out that the guy standing beside him was the legendary great adventurer everyone worships. Marin's mind spun with shock and confusion, until the crestflower burst into bloom in Jade's hand, proving the person in front of her wasn't just someone else, it was Jade herself. Turns out this girl grew up obsessed and set her sights on following Jade's path, because every time her sister came home, she'd spin stories about that hard-working adventurer, and Marin was always right there in the middle of it. So Dorami started wondering if anyone ever told tales about her too, but nope, there weren't any, since it had been a full year since Marin last saw her. Still, her sister remained a humble dragon, even so she was sure this year would be packed with heroic moments as a brave girl, right there beside Jade. And she was ready to spill her epic adventure right here, right now. While the train was still rattling, they finally rolled into the capital. Then everyone split up fast, because Jade and Dorami were heading home, and Marin stayed put at the station, waiting for her brother to come pick her up. Lucky for Marin, she was buzzing with motivation. She'd vowed to become as strong as Jade one day, so she waved goodbye and plunged into her own journey. Dorami was already exhausted, yet that dragon still nearly passed out as a sleeping human, clinging to the same clothes that never transformed into cleaner, comfier ones, until Jade finally stopped freaking out about it. And that's how the white dragon guardian sprawled on the bed, fully relaxed and blissfully satisfied. Until he snapped awake in the dead of night and hurried to Jade to say he was starving. Jade instantly sensed her night and her precious sleep was about to get wrecked, because all she wanted was to finally rest, but the smell of fresh seasoned chicken and ribs wouldn't let up, flooding her with cravings until she was basically drooling, so she bolted for dinner before her fantasies could ruin the bed. The second they burst out the door, a voice from the past snapped their names, Marin standing right there with the guild receptionist, for some unexplained reason, and Jade's heaven got turned into pure shock. Once she spotted them holding hands, everything clicked, she knew it at once. He finally had to have figured it out too, and after Garnet thanked Jade for the loan, their suspicions about Marin's existence were confirmed for real. Garnet's little sister shows up at the exact right moment, like fate hit play. Jade remembered that little girl insisting her sister always gushed about how hard Jade worked every single day she came home, and then the girl even dared to mention the name, Jade, like it could be her, even though that felt like a stretch. And the biggest praise she'd unleash, while someone drops to their knees and holds nothing back. Once again, it felt like the world was smiling, until our protagonist started up toward Garnet Heaven, ready to repay the loan in her as a substitute, and Jade told him, "Don't stress, take care of it, no rush, because in their world, helping each other is what good neighbors do." He told the receptionist, loud and clear, that they're real friends, because stuff like this is always fine. Hearing those words, Garnet showered Jade with a sweet, radiant smile and for the first time, he spilled to his curious little sister that Jade was really his friend. Then he dragged the receptionist outside to share a meal. But Garnet waved it off for now. He and Marin had just stuffed themselves before heading back home, and for a brief moment, the whole place felt heavy and gloomy. Until Garnet leaned in and calmed Jade, telling her they'd get another shot, and all four of them would finally share a proper meal on a different day. Jade finally got what she wanted, one quiet night with a clean mind and no inappropriate thoughts at all. Just as the sun popped over the horizon and tapped the door, Jade swung it open, heart racing as she wondered who'd be waiting on the other side. Was it too early for anyone to show up and overwhelm her with a surprise? Turns out it was Garnet. She came looking for her for some reason nobody could explain. Jade immediately pinched himself to see if this was a hallucination or a dream. Then, when it wasn't, he locked his eyes on Garnet's stunning presence. It was the very first time he'd seen her in a skirt, and the cuteness hit so hard it practically overwhelmed him, because she almost never wore anything like that. Garnet usually slips on her pants while she stares into her own memories, but there's one tiny problem. If you lock eyes for too long, it turns weird fast. Still, Jade steps in and makes it obvious. He's got the casual clothes she uses, and he knows Garnet always wears them to work, so he'll get it right this time, later. Hold up, let's talk to Jade first, no delays. Jade spends his precious time just listening, and I bet it'll be something amazing since Garnet is finally about to ask that adventurer if he wants to hit the guild today. Her grit hardens for a second, then snaps into pure despair the moment she realizes Jade is heading to that place. Garnet starts backing out as she apologizes for waking him, and the adventurer can't help staring in shock, because right when that moment hits, it vanishes, leaving him with one burning question. But Jade refuses to let it go and fires off an order at Garnet. "Say it exactly the way I want, and don't you dare change a thing." He made sure the receptionist caught every word, because she was trying to rush in instead of waiting for him at the guild. He locks eyes with the woman and tells her, "Don't hold back, use me, we're friends." That's how Garnet can finally spill the truth. She's got personal backup, and she uses it to pull Jade aside and ask about her sister, Marin. Garnet tells Jade to keep an eye on Marin all day long. Garnet has a gut feeling about what's coming for her sister, and as soon as Jade realizes the woman he loves trusts him with this, his eyes snap wide, then he gladly accepts her request. Ditching Garnet is the only move, because all she can really ask is whether Dorami and Jade finally crush their 10-year plan. And with tears choking his thoughts, he still asked the child he was about to care for if they were asleep, ignoring everything else. Garnet nervously checked herself in the mirror, wondering if her skirt made her look weird, while Jade kept staring at her without blinking for minutes. Strange didn't even come close for Jade. She was convinced her skirt matched Garnet's style perfectly. The receptionist beamed when he said her fresh outfit was a gift from him. Marin slipped into it anyway, even as the skirt made her feel anything but confident. General Jade teased Marin for crushing on Garnet, and Marin shot back that she was all in too. The receptionist was determined to make her sister smile, even if her face was stuck in sadness. Garnet pushed back hard on Marin, becoming an adventurer again, because she knew danger would crawl right back into her life the moment she left as a young girl. Now she was officially a real member of the Fellowship, and Jade got exactly what her crush wanted, but she refused to burn bridges, so she backed Marin for now, until she could set off on her adventure in peace. A few hours later, the sisters finally caught up with Jade and Dormi, and they promised to lead her straight through a full-blown tour of the capital. After a quick stop at the guild, Marin couldn't wait to kick off her journey. So they didn't waste a second, raced through the reports, and wrapped up those meetings with the other kids just to hear Marin's totally undeniable heroic story. Where else would you ever find a girl with no crest, staring monsters down and charging straight at them? After the crew stepped into the boutique, racks of cute clothes and sparkly accessories lined the walls for little girls to stare at and pick from. Marin flashed a 10,000 allowance from Garnet because she wanted the same clothes as Jade, but when it came down to sizing, they ended up picking Style D instead. So Marin dove into the pile of one-piece dresses and robes, and every single one was white, except for just one that broke the rule. Still, she couldn't make up her mind, so they kicked the choice to later, setting it up for a handshake between two allies who rocked white clothes. Then they shifted their attention to other stuff, shoes, handbags, and jewelry, whatever caught their eye. After bouncing around for a few minutes, Durrami and Marin both grabbed matching adorable bags. Then Durrami proudly declared she'd use hers to stash her rock collection. Right after that, she slipped Marin a pebble as a sweet little proof of their friendship. And since Garnet's little sister loved it, she slipped a hairpin onto Durrami as a gift. Next up, Marin and Jade lavished praise on the cute little white dragon, gushing that it was absolutely adorable. And that sent Durrami into a swirl of happiness and embarrassment as they hurried off to their next destination, the secret weapon warehouse, where power hides behind locked doors. Sadly, that sweet cuteness vanished the second she clanked into full steel gear, zero wiggle room for humor. Good news, though, they tossed the idea of buying defense equipment because it just didn't fit Marin's style. They went with paired shield daggers, and at last Marin got to try that insanely light mithril shield, the strongest metal on the planet. It looked pricey, but Jade bargained hard with the shopkeeper, and somehow Marin still walked away with enough money for lunch. Jade marched into the shop by herself, grilled the shopkeeper for the shield's price, and got slammed with the truth. Mithril's value had shot up, meaning the gear would cost way more than the buyer could ever afford. Total shock, Jade dangled a jaw-dropping $5 million for the shield, and its owner snapped it up without hesitation. Marin was absolutely stunned. She couldn't believe her brand new equipment cost just $5,000, and she swore it felt like a miracle, especially since Jade had promised it would help her keep her livelihood going. Marin couldn't wait to use her new weapon, and in the end, that one truth was all Jade needed to see. This shield pumped her up and lit a fire under the aspiring adventurers, pushing them to chase her dream with fearless confidence. During lunchtime after they finished shopping, both girls clung to each other's hands, but Jade just had to act out her Jade streak, wanting to keep doing the same thing so she could have Garnet wrapped up that night. The receptionist finally made it home, and there was Marin already waiting, while Jade kept her company. And right away, the young girl burst up and told Garnet everything that happened today. She finally pulled out the legendary shield she bragged about all the time, and when she told the receptionist it was only worth $5,000 at the Armory Warehouse store, Garnet knew the real price was way higher. She snapped to the truth the second she sensed what Jade had pulled off, then flashed Marin a smile, choosing to keep the gorgeous lie intact as a reward for that adventurous Garnet. She invited them to a dinner treat, but Jade wouldn't let a cent slide. She insisted on footing the bill, then snapped at the receptionist to keep their hands off and offer zero help. Because she was giving Marin the green light to join them for tomorrow's house cleaning, and Garnet was totally on board. The neighbor woman let out a warm little chuckle, then told Jade she trusted her completely, again, to look after Marin. Thank goodness the adventurer flipped into protection mode just then, swearing to Garnet he'd guard Marin no matter what, because something sinister lurked in their house and they couldn't afford to take chances. The next day, she scrubbed the shield clean to wipe out a bunch of nasty germs. Turns out Garnet had already slipped in there and started working before he even left home, because if the older one was around, that equipment wouldn't have been sitting there waiting. While they scrubbed the Durrami weapons and wiped the entire house, the place stayed spotless, so clean it felt unreal, until hours slipped by and everything finally shone thanks to their hard work. Jade promised to buy every treat they'd worked for, then right before the lollipops and Dorami candies could even be unveiled. While cleaning, someone stumbled on a letter they never meant to find. The dragon girl swore the thing was jammed between two books, but when Jade finally found out, she realized she'd totally forgotten it was even there, yet it had come straight from the king. They literally knew the king in person, yet he never once said a word, so yeah, that part felt wildly confusing. And Jade, she looked like an ordinary nobody, at least until disaster turned that normal life upside down. Jade revealed the truth. This letter wasn't a warning at all. It was a blazing invitation to a party for every adventurer ranked 8 and above. Every year they threw a grand celebration for the king's birthday, and both of them couldn't stop wondering if they'd get piled with mouthwatering food, though Jade felt a little unsure, because he'd never been to a ball in his life. Of course, he kept his reasons locked up tight, because he wanted to chase that quest and lose himself in time with Garnet at the guild. Deep down, though, Jade couldn't help it either, because she loved that place and wanted to tag along. Then why don't you just take my sister? Marin snapped, and right then, Jade blurted out the one person she'd been thinking about. Jade fell into deep thought, certain it was only a matter of time before everything finally happened. Okay, because in his mind, they were already getting along just fine as friends, until Jade slammed that idea shut, and everything between him and Garnet turned into straight-up business. But now there was something more, and her receptionist flashed him a sweet, genuine smile. Time and time again, Jade dug deep, forced himself to stand up, and chased what he wanted until it became real. This was the perfect moment for those sweet, romantic words, so when Jade pushed himself to invite his beloved to the kingdom's grand ball, he was hit with the awful fear of getting turned down. And just as he was about to step up, Dome went and helped by jinxing it, telling the guard he'd go along if Garnet refused the invitation, because apparently the universe needed drama. That's why Jade dragged him into prayer practice, and it couldn't have landed at a better time, since Dorami and Marin were about to jump into the bath, so Jade made him drink it. The secret arc training happening right in front of the receptionist's house didn't shock anyone. This man got swallowed by pressure and nerves, so he steadied himself with a sharp plan, Garnet as his partner in the ball, all while he pretended to be Madonna. Jade went on the offensive with a whole pile of attempts, starting with dull-weather small talk and lifeless sentences, trying to land the moment on something, anything, focused on the joyful king's birthday. Needless to say, the whole thing bombed so badly, it made the odds feel cursed, like the Demon King's level of suffering was sliding in, until Jade finally saw the answer and knew exactly what had to be done. All he wanted was to dance with the woman he loved and pour out every feeling in his heart. Then Jade burst out with the perfect words, hitting the nail on the head, making a real difference, and leaving Garnet definitely going to think about Jade afterward. Maybe she slipped in behind the shocked hero this time, and it turned into a full-blown nightmare for the adventurer. Even with that sweet, charming smile the receptionist adored, Garnet came by to check on her sister while she rested, and Jade quickly told her the kids had been bathing by themselves and were just now done cleaning up. Jade's stomach dropped at what Garnet might think, because Garnet felt totally different now, so she took a risky shot and asked the receptionist what she thought of her, straight from Garnet's own words. In her mind, she's an absolute sweetheart, and that kindness is a huge lift for Jade's heart. And Garnet's dead set on the fact that she's not only hardworking, but also super sociable. The kids light up because, in that woman's eyes, she's finally not weird anymore. But deep down, he still couldn't celebrate, because Garnet heard a party invite come out of nowhere, like fate itself had just grinned at him, and his secret training suddenly stopped being a dream and became something real. Jade shot a quick mental check, would this choice torch her dreams? But when the receptionist agreed, she nearly froze in shock, and the adventurer couldn't even process it. So Jade peppered Garnet with one urgent question after another, desperate to confirm that it truly didn't bother her to go with her to the king's party. Jade's excitement burst out so hard she almost blurted that she liked Garnet, but she swerved it at the last second, and Garnet just laughed right back. At last they waved goodbye, but Jade missed the full burst of Garnet's happy smile because she was already heading back home. Garnet still wore a bright smile as she practiced dancing with her invisible partner. And she told both girls who just stepped out of the bathroom. Garnet said she'd go to the ball with her, so Jade pushed herself to practice like crazy because she didn't want to trip over her crush's feet. But first, he had to pick an outfit, but his first try totally backfired, way too shiny and flashy, turning Garnet's bright clothes into a full-on fashion disaster. So he slipped into a dark cloak, but the judges greeted him with crushing low scores. Jade's third attempt looked promising and barely got any pushback, and he felt it too, yet in the end, this time was the one that finally satisfied him. He leaned in, nodded, and thanked them both for their thoughts. With only 5 days left until the party, Jade threw herself into non-stop studying and dance practice, determined to wow Garnet, while Garnet's own side was nowhere to be seen, not a single panel, even as the daytime party finally rolled in. Before Marin ever stepped into Jade and the White Dragon's side, she'd only done it after tagging along on the girl's very first quest as an adventurer, just like the rest of them. When tomorrow finally hits, Marin is already itching to go home, because her real plan was only to knock out her first job in this capital, even if it's painfully sad. Jade, though, pushes to get her progress moving fast, while Disaster on the other side starts gearing up a celebration party just for him and Marin, because he wants to toast her big win and commemorate her achievement as an adventurer. They claim they're rushing straight to the guild registration office. Marin tackles it all solo, even while nerves are rattling in her chest. She obediently follows every step to register, then Mars' documents get filled in fast, and finally she hands over the magical crystal to find out what kind of crest she'll get. At last, a glowing flower symbol pops up, giving the rookie adventurer the chance to sprint back to her friends and drop the best news of all. When she finally manages to snatch the exact same crest as Lucky Jade. He's fully on the girl's side, so he doesn't even blink. He kicks off her adventure and sprints straight to the mountain, where she'll finally face her deadliest enemy, a slime monster. She yanks herself free of Slime's grip and bolts for her life, then just a few seconds into the chase. Marin uses that move like a jab, teasing Slime's attention and making it sound exactly like a chicken. An unforgivable insult that leaves the target no choice. He snaps, fights back, and keeps attacking Marin nonstop. Even with all that power, she still sharpens herself, leveling up from within. Marin quickly figures out a ruthless trick. She stabs her sword straight at the enemy instead of swinging to slice, and the slime crumples into a tiny, boring little sound, then finally yells that she's won as Marin finishes her first quest as a flower. But now the adventurer's final mission is simple. Meet that handsome receptionist every day, ask for a meeting with him, and push yourself to the point where you'll finally become the greatest adventurer. Jade's finally getting ready for the party, and wow, she nailed her look with a perfect 100% on her grade. Durrami and Marin say Jade can't stop shaking with nerves because the clock is ticking, just a few hours left until she finally gets to dance with Garnet in the castle, one of her biggest dreams. Still, Jade's praying the receptionist shows up late, since he's stuck on his shift at work. Then bam, those sudden knocks hit, and everyone jumps like they've been caught off guard. But Jade tears the door open anyway, and there it is, the love of her life, staring back, and she can't help but get completely starstruck. He keeps staring at her outfit and the way she looks, because this beautiful woman in front of him has him absolutely hooked. He can't look away. With that angelic voice, Starstruck leans in and asks Jade straight up if he's been waiting way too long for her to finally show up. Jade locks eyes with him, soaking in this dreamy moment as the magical night closes in, then he sweeps the woman he loves into a dance. Right after that, Jade locks her eyes on Garnet, and the sight leaves her totally speechless as pure admiration hits her for the receptionist's stunning beauty. Jade blew past Durrami and Marin's expectations at first, but the moment he got enchanted by that stunning woman, hell, he even compared her to a bride who'd marry him. He just couldn't shake it. But Garnet's husband grabbed her by the worry and begged for Jade's opinion on her appearance, then froze cold because the first time Garnet said his name, he was still in shock. Jade couldn't help himself. He told Garnet, right to her face, that she looked absolutely stunning in her dress. And the receptionist rewarded the adventurer's compliment with a gorgeous smile, which made Jade's face light up all over again and proved it was a hit. They finally decided to head out right now and track down the fountain in the square, just like Garnet asked. They slipped out while it was still way too soon for that big party to kick off. Right as the kids' party kicked off, everyone cheered Marin's first win as an adventurer, bragging about how the slime job went perfectly, right up until evening fell and the real disaster finally showed up. They threw their full support at her, again, congratulating her with all their hearts, even though tomorrow would tear them apart. In this wild drunk version, Durrami and Marin downed a cup of milk until they finally crashed out satisfied. Marin stared at the lollipop she chewed like it was a miracle from the heavens, and then suddenly realized she wanted to buy Garnet a gift, paying with her own hard-earned money. She needed to remind herself that the money Manabha gave her for being alone still wasn't nearly enough. By then most people had already spent it on Dorami candy, and nobody could stand watching their friend crumble in that kind of sadness. The dragon told her to grab a mission from the Union right now and earn the money she needed, at least for the moment. Meanwhile, Jade and Garnet were racing toward the plaza. The nervous hero heard the receptionist slipped out early today so Jade wouldn't be stuck waiting. Then it clicked. Garnet wasn't just looking forward to the castle ball, she was itching to get there, and it had nothing to do with dancing. Jade's excitement hit her so hard she felt the same way. She might dance terribly, but when she heard it, her cheeks flared red, and she promised Garnet she'd make sure the party was worth it, so Garnet wouldn't regret showing up with her. At last, they burst into the square, and right there, waiting for them, was the special empty seat. But while Jade soaked in the view, she already snatched it up, and Garnet grinned at the fountain splashing behind them. Even before they could even sink onto the bench, just like Jade had prayed they would. Jade couldn't take his eyes off Garnet's beauty, so he kept staring at her face instead of looking at that famous mountain. He still tiptoed around the awkward fear of being labeled a weirdo who somehow missed Jade standing there, and then, boom, Garnet's mind flipped from tension to gratitude, thanking him for backing Marin during her quest and keeping watch over her the whole time. Jade finally stopped worrying once she saw how restless Garnet got every time her sister vanished into the forest to adventure. So she finally blurted out a million tiny questions, grilling the receptionist to see if she'd push back on Marin's dream just because Garnet had shown up. Her smile collapsed into grief, and she confessed her biggest terror. Marin was headed the same way as their father, the adventurer who vanished for months and never made it back alive. The last time they saw him was 12 years ago, back when Marin wasn't even born yet. which means there's a brutal chance he's already gone from this world, so meeting him again might never happen. Garnet signed onto the guild staff to dig for clues about where her father had gone, but every door stayed shut. No sightings, no whispers, nothing, so now at Jade's request. Garnet finally spilled her father's name, Onyx, and the moment she said it, it hit every Pocket Monster fan right in the heart. Then Jade blurted out, "Does Onyx have a scar on his right cheek?" Even crazier, after he once protected Garnet's mom, he ended up with an old injury that gave Jade the proof she needed. The man she met in their hometown 12 years ago was him. Back then, Onyx flashed a 7-pointed flower symbol on the back of his hand, and he was the very first adventurer Jade ever met, back when she was still just a kid. That's why Jade leaned in and told Garnet that Onyx's wild adventure tale was the spark that made her want to become an adventurer just like him. 12 years back, Onyx stormed into Jade Village to tell the boy his tale and to push him toward more adventures, but fate yanked the moment away because Jade was only 10 years old then. And it would still take him 2 more years before he could finally join the guild, but that never crushed his dream. He still trained with fire, itching to travel the world and rise as a real hero. The cozy talk kept rolling until they finally swapped names, and the man dropped his own, Onyx. Now jump to the present. Garnet clings to a sliver of hope after hearing Jade's backstory. Jade can't help but thank Onyx, because without him, he never becomes the adventurer he is today, and he never gets the chance to meet his daughter, the one he ends up falling in love with. Jade vows to himself that he'll hunt down Onyx no matter what, then leans into Garnet and promises he'll track down every clue, even if he has to chase it across the other side of the world. Jade also desperately wants to see Onyx again, because this is how he repays Garnet for accepting his invite to the dance party. The receptionist bursts into a laugh and thanks Jade for telling her she'll bring the best dance tonight, slipping the thanks over as a little reward for her offer. They start heading out because the party is about to kick off any second. Then disaster strikes. Something sticky clings to Jade's dress and leaves a nasty stain, and in seconds he's convinced it's his fault, snapping into blame. At first, Garnet didn't think it was on them, but now they can't even think about disrespecting the king by showing up in dirty clothes. Jade dug their own grave in real time by offering to lend them an outfit from their place. Yeah, it all fell apart when they got older, and they sprinted back home with barely any time left, only to discover Marin and the white dragon vanished, nowhere in sight. Jade tore through the whole house in a panic, even as that awful, uneasy gut feeling kept screaming at them, and realized both of them had vanished, nowhere in sight. Suddenly, Jade ignored the missing mythal shield like it was nothing. And they figured it out. Azub and Marin had headed straight to the guild to snag a quest. Jade didn't even realize how deadly the request was, so she grabbed Garnet and shoved him toward the guild before the royal party could kick off. Jade and Garnet pounded the road to the guild, screaming each other's names at the top of their lungs, yet not a single answer came back. Luckily, a guild staff member grabbed them by the sleeve and sent them straight to the right place. So Jade grilled them about what happened in Marin, and instead of answers, both of them just lit up, fully invested in wiping out slimes. Their quest, the last thing Jade and Garnet set out to do, is exactly the kind of story they're desperate to tell right now, because whatever drove them into that danger in the first place, they're not backing down. Jade meant to reclaim them, so she shoved Garnet toward home and told her to wait right there. What about the party he can't wait to hit, dancing with the woman he loves? Yeah, but first, there are way more important things that have to come before it. Garnet suddenly worries. What if ditching the person she invited to the ball comes off as rude? Jade says the disaster and Marin are worth more than any party, especially when it's the king's birthday. But there's no king, so yeah, she's rolling right back into the game again this year. Garnet's beaming with confidence. She's not going to do it. She exhales in relief and tells Jay he'll have her back with her sister and Dora Me. Then she hands the whole mess over to him. Jay is ready to step up and handle it in the dark forest, no hesitation. Marin's stomach twists. Can they really beat the slime? Even as darkness creeps closer, disaster doesn't scare her. She only keeps pushing forward, determined to turn their final adventure together into good memories, even as the fear hangs in the air. The white dragon is determined to make Marin's wish come true, so it zeroes in on the laser with laser focus, pushing itself to the top of its game while it keeps scanning every corner of its surroundings. At last, Dorami feels the enemy closing in, maybe through an attack that slams into her, maybe even through Marin. And it's not just one slime, there are plenty of them. And it spirals into a full-blown nightmare, so Dorami panics and grabs her friend's hand, because they've got to execute a tactical retreat. Their eyes stay shut, but the two of them sprint like they can feel the entrance ahead, charging forward until the ice swallows the view. At last, the clouds break, the air clears, and they slip past that notorious slime trap, totally dodging disaster. They pause for a breather while Dorami hunts for a path back to their hometown, while that poor dragon frets nonstop. But all that fear vanishes the moment Marine pours out her gratitude and pushes Dorami to head home, finish the thing she truly wants. So she can march on with her friend in tow, the exact same wish that drove her before. Then a joyful, humble dragon flashes a bright grin, smiling like it's bursting with happiness. They've got to wrestle their raging souls into silence, choke out the hunger that's driving them, and fight their way back to the capital. Someone's trying to crash their party and get in. And it's none other than a wingless menace that calmly tries to snack on a few candy bites from both of them. This guy looks friendly until you spot those terrifying fangs. Dorami and Marin sure don't feel friendly right now, because as soon as they run into a wild beast, they freak out and scream at the top of their lungs, since only someone with at least a lucky rank 3 can even hope to take it down. Morin realizes the monsters can't see or hear a thing, yet their noses are terrifyingly sharp, so he tosses the jerky to lure the bear's focus away. So they can sprint for their lives all over again. Anxiety crashes over Dorami, fear choking them, because they know once they face that monster again, they can't win, and they don't get to survive it. At last, they spot an empty cave and rush inside, checking if this dark spot could be their next hiding place. Despite the bizarre stench that made them gag and drop like they'd been hit, Marin barely gets a breath out before she spots another monster's dead bones wreaking havoc right in front of her. They're convinced this cave is the bear's nest, so yeah, one wrong move and we're dinner for the late-night monsters fast. Dorami and Marin sprint for the cave entrance, only to slam into the truth that it's already too late. Too late, the winged bear slammed itself in their way, cutting off the only road to escape. The whole mess pushed Marin to crawl forward, kneeling and tearing into herself, blaming her own hunger to join them, like she'd picked the worst moment possible, while the white dragon immediately pinned it on her, and Marin wrestled with the question that burned in her chest. Should she switch back to her true form, especially if Garnet, her sister, might turn on the dragon girl? But saving Marin and taking the hate head-on mattered more than standing still, while her precious friend stumbled into the Reapers, understanding, even if it left Marin totally lost. The girl finally felt sure everything would be okay, right now, and for whatever came next. So you didn't have to panic anymore. She was here to shield you no matter what blew up next, and that only made things feel even more messed up for Marin. Dorami ripped off her clothes to keep Marin out of harm's way, left her prized belongings behind, and then loaded herself with the brutal price of the winged bear's scales. A letter D flashed across her skin, like the mark had been burned there on purpose. And her transformation kicked off the moment she declared, loud and fearless, that she was a powerful dragon. In that moment, Marin could only stare in awe as her friend battled forward, until the dazzling light twisted into a mystical white-winged beast monster. She roared to kick off a counterattack and shield her beloved friend. Rage flared in Dorami as she stared down the blind bear, then shot forward like a streaking comet, smashing into it before it could react, because the monster had already caught the deadly scent of the dragon's claws, sending the bear slamming into a tree and dropping it instantly. That sealed Dorami's win, because he didn't just pull it off, he also kept Garnet's last children safe too. All that was left was getting Marine to the capital, but since he already knew Dorami's real identity, dread gripped him. Would Dorami actually go, or would she burn their friendship right there? Then Dorami's mistake hit him hard. He regretted pushing Marin to take on the mission. They could have kept the party rolling and soaked up every second together, until the white dragon's deep, relentless thoughts crashed it all. Tears surged in her sad human eyes as she despised how brutally heartbreaking this goodbye was. When Dorami got swallowed by heartbreak, Jade's voice echoed through the chaos. Jade finally showed up to take them back to the capital. Seconds earlier, she'd heard battle roaring nearby and sprinted straight toward it, only to find the disaster had already burned out and everyone was safe. Even though the white dragon had no choice, he reluctantly snapped back into human form to make it happen. Jade spotted Marin and blurted out, "Are you okay?" Without a word, the girl dropped to her knees and sobbed, begging forgiveness for dragging a quest into the night. But Jade didn't actually feel angry. He only felt relief, knowing they were both safe. He let them head home first, and just as that happened, a fresh monster burst onto the scene. Marin had figured out Dorami's real form, and that revelation sent the white dragon into pure panic. But somehow, when Marin strides up to her precious friend with that bright smile, it looks like nothing at all is required to put any worries to rest. He praised her grit and bravery for pulling him out of that monster's grasp earlier. She had a gut feeling this was it for them, especially with Marin wrapped in her cloak of Dorami, so when she snapped back into a human, she wouldn't catch a cold. Marin gave a shy little shake of her head, feeling like Dorami was too mortified to show her face. That charming light flared once more, and the white dragon shattered into a young girl, cloaked in a drifting haze just like her current form. "Are you scared, Dorami?" Marin asked. "Don't you fear ending up as some terrifying dragon, the kind people would call a monster?" In the end, DY found out Marin would treat her like a real friend, and it felt like pure magic, all rainbows and butterflies. Whether she was a winged monster or just another kid, she still handed Garnet back the hairpin she'd given her and let her return it to the dorm. A few days back, the dragon girl got hit right in the heart, so she slipped the accessory back on, and the two of them just beamed at each other while celebrating their friendship. Just as it was time to head home, they finally noticed Jade was there, no Garnet at her side, like she'd ditched the ball completely. And boom, turns out they finally realized she'd been hunting them down the whole time. Right after she heard they were gone, Dorami shot back an apology. She completely understood how her guardians thrilled to dance with the woman he loved, and Marin agreed, even crushing herself with guilt over it all. Jade wasn't mad at either of them. She cared about their safety more than anything in the world. Watching Dorami and Marin tear themselves apart over their weaknesses was what finally pushed Jade to step in and soothe them first. Jade straight up told Marin she wasn't weak at all, that her brain and instincts had clocked the danger and helped her slip out of the dormy, and that her courage was the shield that saved her. Those words hit hard, and for a moment, it looked like they finally convinced both girls to breathe again. Jade pushed them to head home and make sure they reported they were safe to that anxious receptionist. She'd been waiting on them all along, just as Jade demanded. Garnet stayed hidden inside until a shout cracked the air from the door, and then she watched both of them step into the house, her eyes snapping straight to her sister, and pure joy flooding her as she finally got to see her again after all that time. With worry gnawing at him, he rushed to Marin like his life depended on it, squeezed her in a long-awaited embrace, then broke into a warm smile and spilled a few relieved tears. Instead of just accepting their apologies, they started pointing fingers and fighting over who was to blame, because deep down, both of them kept saying it was your fault, or something just as bad. The first thing Garnet felt hit just like it did for Jacky, so he didn't bother with any more scolding, because Marin and Doomy already looked like they'd finally gotten the message. So Garnet genuinely thanked Jade for all her help and told her, "Just say the word. If there's anything I can do to repay you, I'm in." Jade dragged Garnet into a plan for a massive party next year, so they could keep celebrating even though the current one had just ended. As usual, Jade masked her real motives by acting like she loved dancing. He brought the receptionist in on the idea and pushed them to dance right then, no more waiting 12 months for the next shot. They ditched the usual spot and shoved themselves into an empty room where they could dance like nobody was watching, while the gramophone blasted the music. Jade and Garnet locked eyes, until Jade pulled off the one impossible move, snatching Garnet's hand like it was fate. Jade had never seen anything so soft or so slender, yet the moment her fingers slid into his world, his heart stopped, and fear instantly sparked that he'd tugged Garnet too close and accidentally hurt her mid-dance. Garnet, cheeks burning with embarrassment, tiptoes toward her partner, trying not to make a sound. They trade nervous little smiles, their faces hovering mere inches apart. Jade catches a whiff of Garnet's scent, then feels her partner's chest press gently against her. She lets out a sharp gasp as excitement surges. That sweet romantic music swells as they finally step onto the dance floor, and the second they start moving, both of them are totally lost, staring into each other's eyes like nothing else in the world exists. Savoring the instant, their one-sided crush finally flips into a real, beautiful love story. With worry gnawing at him, he rushed to Marin and Disaster, pulled them in tight, and greeted them with a shaky smile and a few relief-soaked tears. Their apologies didn't land at all. Both sides snapped and fought over who was really to blame, each one basically insisting it was all my fault, and the moment Garnet processed it, she felt the exact same thing Jacky did. And he didn't bother with more scolding, because it looked like Marin and Doomy had finally gotten the message. So Garnet genuinely valued Jade's never-ending help and told her, "Just tell me if you need anything, I'll repay you." Jade hit up Garnet and invited her to a massive party next year, so they could keep the fun rolling, because the current one had barely wrapped up. As usual, Jade masked her real agenda by acting like she actually loved dancing. He guides the receptionist, urging them to hit the dance floor right now, no more waiting another 12 months for a fresh shot. They ditched their old spot and shoved themselves into an empty room, then let loose on the dance floor while a gramophone blasted music through the air. Jade locked eyes with Garnet, then pulled off a move no one should be able to make, grabbing her hand and holding on. For the first time, Jade felt how soft and slight her fingers were, and it hooked his heaven hard, so hard it scared him that if he tugged Garnet closer while they danced, he'd accidentally hurt her. Garnet blushes at her humiliating situation and creeps toward her partner, trying not to make a sound. They trade nervous, shy smiles, so close their faces are practically breathing the same air. Jade catches a whiff of Garnet's scent and feels her partner's chest against her, making her gasp with excitement. While that sweet romantic music blares in the background, they finally break into dance together. Both of them are utterly spellbound, locking eyes and soaking up the moment when their long-unreturned love finally blossoms into something real. At last, Garnet shut up with the endless apologies for always stepping on Jade's toes, but Jade was so locked into the moment he didn't even realize it. With Garnet's fading worry in the rearview, Jade dove into a blissful night, laughing and partying until the sun finally rose. Jade's stomach growled like thunder under the gramophone's music, and it was the cue to end the dance. He just wished that moment wouldn't end. He wanted it to last a whole lot longer. Garnet's flushed face had him convinced the growling was coming from him, so they should have hauled out food right this second. Turns out the hungry growl came from Marin. Jade rushed over to the feverish receptionist, asked if she was all right, then learned Garnet was holding back and saving her energy for their dance. Everything seemed fine, until you realized that flushed face wasn't excitement at all. It was fear and pure nervous nerves. Garnet had danced with a man for the first time, and now Jade was caught off guard, blushing hard. Garnet, you rocked that dance so hard. Next time you hit a party, they'll all lock onto you the moment you walk in. Jade was genuinely glowing, thrilled to dance right beside Garnet. And he even said it loud enough for the receptionist to hear, her face lit up like fireworks. Jade is up next, the second one, and even though it's already late, she's still completely locked in on what she just said. Then when the dragon overhead told Marin about her guardian's gift, a star flower meant for Garnet, Marin's face flickered with shock, especially when it explained how her guardian spent so much effort catching fish just because it was the receptionist's favorite meal. And after that, Durrami dropped the real top-secret truth about Village Aid's boat, what pointed Marin straight to this place. Plotting a plan to help them finally turn into a real couple. Marin's sister-in-law finally caved, but it took her forever to see what Jade really meant, because Jade didn't just like Garnet, she was head over heels, ready to dive into a real romantic relationship with him. And this wasn't some cute, puppy love thing anymore. Marin straight up had her hopes up, especially once Durrami dropped that bombshell right after. Jade clocked that Garnet had shown up, and in that instant she understood what she felt, yet Garnet couldn't stop his stutter as he tried to either deny it or back up the dragon girl's claim. That's why Garnet finally worked up the courage to corner the adventurer, straight up asking if he really had fallen for the receptionist's face, the one that never carried a hint of disappointment or disgust. Jade was terrified and mortified that this person could turn so cold. Even though Jade clammed up and gave Garnet zero details, the receptionist pushed right on, grilling him about whether he wanted it, because Jade dating someone didn't mean she'd said no to going out with Garnet. Because she was the woman he'd wanted to claim his whole life. When Garnet asked if she was wrong, Jade could only deny it, and in the end, she botched the whole message, fumbling through the anxious, tangled mess of words like it was slipping out of her hands. In the end, Garnet just wanted the truth behind every word Jade threw at her, because what did he mean, really? And that hit Jade like a flashback, her very first meeting with them 10 years ago, and the vow she'd made back then to someday march up to Garnet and finally confess her feelings. Jade refused to let fear take over. She steadied her nerves and went for it, because this was her only shot. Determination blazed in her eyes as he faced the woman he loved. After 10 agonizing years that felt like an eternity, she finally snapped and confessed her love, begging them both to start dating right then and there. Garnet shocked everyone with a sudden move, then broke into a smile and finally gave the long-awaited okay to Jade's proposal. Their bond turned into something they both craved. Garnet wanted it too, and right then, their friendship snapped into a love they'd been chasing since those first crazy milliseconds of meeting. Jade's mind screams with a hidden question mark because he can't believe this is real, and the man wants the reason. Garnet leans in and says she's been watching him for 10 whole years, letting her study his wild, adventurous spirit. And somehow she's always smiling, like sunshine never stops. And that's how the two of them ended up as lovers. Trust me, the receptionist's going to be over the moon. And yeah, it hits even harder for Jade, maybe even happier than the woman herself. So here's why it's a checkmate for anyone who won't believe it, especially the ones who hate the ship. Jade finally slams the final chapter of her wild romance quest, and the big boat sets sail for real. Jade is absolutely glowing, because his dream finally came true. So he swears on his life and promises Garnet, telling her, "With this, I'll make you happy, no doubts, no breaks." They're hit with congratulations for surviving the disaster. And Marin ushers Jade back in, and suddenly his lifelong dream finally lands, bigger, brighter, and even better than he ever imagined. The very next day, they roll with Marin to the train station, where the goodbye hits hard. That beginner adventurer finally shows up, and of course Marin's fired up. He wants to grind until he hits rank 10, with Roy and Jade cheering him on every step, plus Garnet finally trusting that his little sister can pull it off. Even though he didn't want it, the train was still about to roar out of the station, no turning back. And just like that, the Marines started filing out. Suddenly, Dorami spun to a stop and cut off her journey, handing her the most gorgeous stone he'd found on their adventure, a dazzling blue Sean gemstone. So Marin couldn't stop wondering, was it really okay for her to take something like that, something so valuable? Dorami didn't just complain, she laid it down as a condition. If Marin came back with more beautiful stones from her journey, then she'd finally make it worth her trouble. Right after the deal got sealed, Marin, fully locked in, stepped onto the train. And with a grin, he said his happy goodbyes to the waving dragon girl perched on his back. Until Dorami finally dropped to her knees and erupted into tears, Marin couldn't shake the feeling that she'd been swallowing all that sadness since it began. But Garnet stepped in, gave him a promise, and told him this wasn't goodbye for good. And the next day, since it was a holiday, she'd sweep them all to her parents' house, and yep, her boyfriend was on the guest list too. He was honestly thrilled, until Jade started mulling over what gift he'd get his mother-in-law, just like Dormi said he would. Jade couldn't wait a second longer. She was ready to dive into the next leg of her adventure and race around the world. Especially since Jade's gift could reach Garnet's mother, and because they dug up every scrap of info about her father. But no matter what, Garnet still looked crushed. Jade didn't just feel surprised, she felt betrayed, because she truly thought going out on this plan would make her happy, and it was the exact opposite. Even if Garnet's smiling, Jade would do anything for her, because the moment they're apart, he won't stand it. Jade's cheeks flared red when the receptionist shoved the clothes into her arms and pointed her toward Garnet, because she fully planned to keep him close and drag him back to the guild, and the thought of losing him there made her chest ache with loneliness. Jade could still slip past the counter and meet Garnet anyway, because yeah, they were already a couple. Jade just wanted to stay with his girlfriend in their usual spot, because every time Garnet showed up in that uniform, he couldn't stop staring, like she'd turned into an angel the moment he fell in love. Those words wiped Garnet's worries clean off the map, so she pulled both of them in and invited them over for dinner at her place. But her stomach was pounding with hunger, practically begging to tear into that meat right now. That's why the dragon girl and her guardian ditched the usual routine and ate outside, so they could share breakfast with the receptionist, who looked thrilled to be part of the moment. 3 days later, Doremi watched Jade drift away again, and her mind raced. How many times had it already happened today? Every second was swallowed by thoughts of Garnet, yet somehow the dragon girl smiled anyway, grateful for Jade, and prayed for the kind of happiness that lasts forever with the woman he loved. Jade thanked him for admitting he was running out of ideas to keep Garnet happy. Then bam, Dorami revealed he had a special plan waiting. He told Jade to step out, hit the town, and go enjoy a laid-back date with his girlfriend, right on the strength of that idea. The chance to get closer to Garnet hits with a total shock, because it's somehow 100% real. But then again, where the hell was he supposed to take her? Sure, Garnet's probably headed for a great time, but only if Jade can track down a spot that treats his girlfriend right. So yeah, if you want to score big, you should go shopping with Garnet. Because only the dragon girl and Marin were never the ones who tested it, everyone else did, and it held up, and on top of that, Jade can track down the perfect item for her partner. And once the dust settles, he uses that hard-earned experience as his compass, right on track for the actual date soon after. After that, Jade and Garnet hustle to the department store to hunt for tableware, because Garnet's decided she's buying brand new plates. Of course, Jade sees this as his golden chance to prove he's the boyfriend of the century, so he leaned in and asked her what kind of plates her man wanted. Garnet admitted she wanted a pattern design so the table would look way more alive, and when they finally sat down for dinner, Jade couldn't help but be blown away that her girlfriend was already thinking like that. And she thought she was absolutely adorable, so Jade didn't waste a second, jumping right in to help pick tables that fit their tastes perfectly. Jade and Garnet soaked up every second of their shopping date, hunting plate after plate. Then Jade finally spotted a set with a heart pattern and nudged Garnet for her opinion. And just like that, the receptionist called them cute, and Jade felt the same way too. So she grabbed it as a gift for her girlfriend, even as the room filled with those shocked screams praising Garnet's stunning look, and the embarrassed receptionist stepped in front of Jade, stopping her mid-motion. And the praise kept getting louder as the store staff caught pieces of their private conversation. Jade jolted back to herself, ripping free of unconsciousness. Once the shopping was done, they ditched the street food plans and headed straight to Garnet's place for dinner. On the way home, Garnet couldn't stop gushing about their awesome first date, then capped it off with a sweet smile aimed right at her son's startled girlfriend. It wasn't some boring rehearsal. This was the real deal, even though they started out thinking it was just practice. No one could deny Jade and Garnet crushed it. Turns out the dream they fought for wasn't a fantasy at all. Then dinner hit the table and the whole room lit up. Everyone's faces went satisfied, like they'd just sealed the perfect ending. Garnet made it crystal clear. If they wanted to hear how Jade kept delaying her offer, then they could come eat with her every single day. Right then, she blurts out that she'll start hunting for her father tomorrow, because, as we know, Garnet's dad is the person Jade worships most, and that's exactly why she swears to Garnet she'll bring him back for sure. Even when Garnet puts her full trust in her lover, dread still claws at her, because Jade's safety is never fully out of her mind. Because this journey is coming for blood, and you can bet it's going to be brutal. And with that, her thoughts were enough to crown her as the kingdom's selfless hero, so she could get Garnet to believe they'd return home and see her again, no matter what. Then she blurts out her wild plan to slip into the neighboring country, right as disaster strikes and juice splashes across her glass by pure accident. She blurts out an instant apology, and then Garnet's panic spikes. She's more worried about those stained clothes than anything, demanding Dorami change right now. Then when the dragon girl finally transforms into a princess, she smashes out a last, decisive plan. Because of the dress Garnet handed her, Jade's girlfriend, back when she was the same age as Dormi and Garnet, apparently doesn't mind letting the dragon girl stay exactly who she is, without forcing her into those outfits. Turns out she's buying them because that's her mother, and that's why Garnet refuses to look like a total country bumpkin in front of everyone at the capital, even if she's not exactly thrilled about going. Jade was sure, right then, that Garnet's clothes fit her like they were made just for her. But now this dragon girl demands a straight, honest verdict, like she's asking for the princess treatment. No doubt that's a straight-up 10 out of 10. Dorami shoots Garnet a quick thanks before they even head out, and then they bolt home. She drops onto the bed with that dress still on and slips into a peaceful sleep, like a white dragon, but it all shatters the moment she jolts awake and screams, terrified by the nightmare. In Jade's dream, a disaster is already in motion, yet he can't figure out who's behind it until the moment he's reminded of it. That scared girl isn't just terrified, she's dealing with a monster called the White Dragon. After all that, their kingdom becomes the only place that shelters those creatures, so when Dorami has to step into any other country, you already know fear hits her hard, probably spilling her drink before she even takes a breath. No wonder people from other countries would shun her the moment they learned about her anxiety, or worse, go after her like hunters. Jade offered her the chance to stay and guard the house, never saying she could get left behind. Garnet shrugged at what the girl wanted, and Dorami flat-out refused to tag along with Jade on the journey. Even with my heart hammering from fear and anxiety, I couldn't shake the dread that something horrible might happen. They tossed everything aside and went straight for what mattered, helping Garnet and Marin, their two closest friends, and they still needed to face their father again and put a huge smile on his face. He ended up slapping his own face like, "Wake up," then pushed past the disaster because if he still wanted, he'd go with Jade on the trip to the neighboring country. So they made the call, break at dawn, and hunt for something incredible right away, adventure so bold it left his wife and daughter behind. The very next day, Jade and Dorami said their goodbyes to Garnet, but fate grounded her, since work kept her from making it to the train station with them. For Jade, that was the only thing that truly mattered, because she was the one. The one who begged to ride along with Jade and Dormi as they launched their search for Onyx and hauled him back to the girl she'd left behind. Yeah, seriously. Then day 2 of the brutal adventure hit, and disaster was already waiting. They were wiped out mentally and physically, but she refused to stop and collapse in the dark forest because the next town was still 3 hours away. On their road to the Jade Kingdom, Jade snapped up a guild quest to hunt down a rumored ghost, but disaster still hasn't gotten the memo. And she slipped away into a maze of thoughts, trapped in nothing but dinner and everything that haunted it. Finally, he learned he'd be battling a ghost, and this poor little dragon hated the idea instantly. Right on the spot, Jade convinced Arami that ghosts weren't truly ghosts at all, but shapeless things that could morph into whatever their enemies feared most. Garnet needs to be here right now, because that ghost is about to shrink down into a pitiful little spider. And with one or two crushing punches, they could bring it down, but he couldn't shake the fear of the worst case, that the ghost might split and transform into a whole swarm of deadly beast jades. Turns out the feared jade basilisk wasn't a nightmare anymore. She could crush those monsters with zero effort, and that was the kind of help that saved everything from disaster. So they kept stumbling, until a loud booming snore ripped through the forest, stealing the young dragon girl's brief peace, and Jade decided to investigate. Because the chilling truth hit hard, right from the start, that terrifying sound was coming from the ghost. Jade and Dorami crouched in the bushes, holding their breath, and then, right in the middle of its deep sleep, a massive black dragon loomed there, nothing like the shapeless beast Jade had described. Now the enemy isn't just some vicious monster lurking outside anymore, because Jade is dead sure that Black Dragon is actually a ghost sent to haunt them. Turns out this kind of air monster doesn't show up in their territory, and they're so confident they even choose to live in those mountains, because they know it's not something to take lightly. With thoughts like that, Jade stalked up to the Black Dragon and baited a reaction, hoping to confirm it knew what kind of creature the ghost was, so it would hold back and not strike right away. He locked eyes with the monster, said nothing, and just waited to see what the Black Dragon would pull next. Then Jade's gut feeling proved right, because a stunning glow flared up and marked the start of the ghost's shockingly unexpected transformation. Jade's eyes snapped wide when he saw the nightmare he feared most finally take form. Jade watched the one who could cut down his grandmother's beloved little life, and though everyone else reacted, Jade didn't flinch. He just stared in stunned disbelief. The beloved grandmother showed up at the event, and the dragon girl immediately scoffed at the whole ridiculous setup, especially when she noticed the old woman landing punch after punch, with zero scary signs anywhere. Even with every brutal punch, Jade still couldn't beat the ghost while it wore that form, so she begged Dorami to step in, but Dorami refused, keeping her distance from Grandma Jade. The whole thing was a trap to lure the ghost, push it to shift into something else, and wipe away the harmless old woman mask the moment Jade's innocent little target was watching. In just a few brutal seconds, it morphed into a terrifying winged bear, and it's happening right now. Then Dorami finally understood. Her day was totally wrecked. She bolted away screaming in panic, terrified by that monster she could never forget, and that unwanted reunion hit her like a nightmare. That move let Jade drive a brutal strike straight into the winged bear's guts, paralyzing him instantly, and sealing the whole fight with Jade's debut. Jade snapped up the moonstone and told Dorami straight up there was a ghost trapped inside it, and the winged bear's hide was already crushed, their conquest finally complete. With Wen's all-powerful trump card in hand, they finally crashed onto a soft, fluffy bed, safe, sound, and disaster-free, as they headed straight for the city of the Dragon Girl. Jade shot her a question. Did you really brawl with your grandma just to show up as the scariest person here? But the truth was way kinder. She actually backed that young adventurer's dream with all her heart. Which sent Jade's fear spiraling after a string of incidents, so when night finally fell, she sneaked out of her house, desperate to taste what it feels like to be an adventurer. But after getting turned around for 3 brutal days, she finally stumbled back, and her grandmother greeted her with the biggest scolding of all like it was a hug. Honestly, it was wild to realize Jade's got a hilarious past. And Dorami still refused to back down. She had to find out who was truly more terrifying, her grandmother, or the way Jade's anticipation kept building. Back in reality, Jade had a grandmother, no ties to her bloodline at all, and she had no clue who her parents were or whether they were even still alive. Before she slipped into the village's abandoned mine, she'd been hiding out in secret with a dragon girl until the day she bolted and vanished before the homeowner could ever catch her. Turns out Dorami slipped in without a sound, her growling stomach betraying her, and the grandmother living there had zero clue a white dragon was unloading at her house that day. Dorami knocked and tried the door again, and when it finally swung open, what she saw was totally impossible, because the dragon girl never got to witness the miracles waiting on that table. So yeah, Dorami tore into it, and didn't stop until the very last bite was gone. Even though she cried afterward, sick with realization of what she'd done just to feed her hunger, Dorami cowered in the attic, trembling through the homeowner's furious shouts below, and it didn't stop for an entire year. Dorami gets shoved into silence, forced to eat the leftovers, and when the woman grows old, she drifts off to sleep, quietly, like the end of a chapter. One day, her grandmother hauls herself up into the attic and drops the truth. She knows exactly who's hiding there, so the white dragon shatters out a broken window in pure despair, and now Dorami is drowning in regret, determined to make it right himself. He bowed to the old woman, then fired out a real apology for everything he'd done. That's why when Jade got the news, she realized the house might be tied to the monarchy, so she shoved Dorami into action, urging her to get there and tell that girl she's safe, that everything's okay, because that's exactly where they're headed next. They press onward, fighting to push the disaster back before it swallows them. They vow no matter what to hunt down Grandma's lover and bring them back. She swore to the fallen star that nobody else would slip through, and that this time she'd finally repair every last regret she had left behind. After that, they finally tore into the monarchy's commercial zone. Dorami raced through town, desperate to track down his grandmother's house. They failed on the first try because they were still pushing into a packed city center, while the dragon girl practically burst with excitement, dreaming of exploring the chaos and swapping her broken legendary sword right in the middle of it all. Then they said goodbye to the old wooden staff, and that moment is stuck in their hearts forever. Their shopping spree has to be shoved aside. Right now, they've got to hunt down Onyx's location and grab answers fast. Jade and Dorami rush to the city's guild hall, only to get shut down when the guild's policy forbids their receptionists from sharing any personal info with anyone else. And yeah, sure, if you're not family, Jade can still spill the truth, Onyx's future son-in-law, but at this point, it might not be enough to save them. The white dragon puppy's eyes lit up the moment he handed over his precious stone to the girl, like it was his whole heart asking to be chosen. Against all hope, the guild staff wouldn't back down, so yeah, Doram thought it was a real joke. But the humanized dragon refused to fold. He dropped yet another pebble onto the table, and at last it pierced the receptionist's heart. And yeah, it worked, so the staff decided to clear it up straight with the guildmaster himself, figuring there was no downside to thanking him face to face. Dorami grinned as she handed over the precious gift, but the receptionist bolted in panic. Apparently, the situation felt way too intense for her. And then it happened. Every bit of their hard work paid off, because the guildmaster finally agreed to meet them, and best of all, Jade showed up in front of him again after so long, just like they both already knew each other. So the disaster got him to confirm it, and that's what dragged him there. Knowing Jade had once crushed a black-skinned dragon, at this country's request, back when the world still feared her, and yeah, the full story comes later. But the moment the talk finally snapped back to the real business, Jade and Dorami seized their chance, begging the guildmaster to help them hunt Onyx, a man who vanished without a trace 12 years ago, only to find out they'd just exposed someone's secrets to others, breaking a rule they were never supposed to touch. But the Federation's chairman was ready to bend the rules, just for Jade. To repay her kindness and show gratitude to her country, he gave everything, absolute thanks to both of them. Tracking down a single log from 12 years back would take the guildmaster at least 3 brutal days. No joke, yet Jade has nothing to worry about, since they can swing by again after they wrap up tomorrow morning. They hit the streets together to burn the last 2 days of their trip, hunting for a gift for Garnet, and Dorami urged them to grab some local fruit, especially peaches, because that's what she was wishing for. This was the spot where the dragon girl swore, in her heart, that she'd gotten engaged, and somehow she truly felt the guardian of their home hand her that seed. So the disaster could plant itself at home, and take one more step toward becoming Garnet's very own plant friend. So Jade grabbed the chance on their final day in town, snatched fresh fruit, then sprinted to a new store to see what else was out there. They walked into the shop packed with options, picked the perfect souvenir, and grabbed a gift before heading out. Gazing at the store like it was pure magic, Jade spotted a flower-shaped pot brimming with water, and Dorami swore it was exactly what Garnet had been craving. Because of that, Jade pictured her girlfriend's moment thanks to the gift, then flashed that sweet smile and thanked her back right there. So it was settled, the flower pot would go to Garnet. While trouble brewed on the other side, a snail went hunting for its next big chance, planting peach trees as it chased its future. Turns out the whole design behind it was heartbreaking. The snail really would have listened to you, but only in a world where someone else would never show up. But the truth is, it only showed up after Dormi stumbled on what could become a replacement for his legendary wooden staff. Even though it wasn't a sword at all, it was a flute. Still, the dragon girl couldn't stop grinning. She kept stealing glances at Jade, practically begging, until Jade finally agreed to buy the instrument. And yeah, Jade didn't just stop there. She planned to grab gifts for Grandma so they wouldn't waste time hunting through a bunch of random accessories like towels, hats, or awesome dragon keychains. In the end, Disaster was totally pleased. He didn't just score the flute, he also grabbed a huge gift for the dragon girl's grandma. And yeah, it's probably overkill, but we're rolling with it, because Dorami then spotted a familiar old woman right nearby. She knelt by the spring and prayed with trembling hope, begging the water to confirm, once and for all, that she was exactly who they'd been searching for. As Durham crept closer, nerves ate him alive, so he finally tucked himself on Jade's back, only to relax when her nod confirmed the answer was real. Jade felt a jolt of hope when the disaster finally showed the white dragon an apology, but her smile wouldn't last. She was terrified the old woman might swing at her any second. Durrami didn't even want to apologize by himself, because this was his mistake from the very start. While everyone was still talking, the whole thing felt like a real shot at redemption. Then the grandmother just walked off, and suddenly they were forced to trail her like stalkers, all the way to the Dutch store and straight to the old woman's house. Then two people spotted an old, plain house and immediately confirmed it was Grandma's home. He kept pounding on the front door until seconds stretched into minutes, and still, disaster refused to show its face. Jade panicked he'd ruined the homeowner's tea time, because of course she was sipping tea at a moment like this, and ordered him to head back to the inn, grab lunch first, then try again. But the grandmother snapped them to a halt with one chilling question: "So, what are you doing here?" Durrami whipped around, face drained of color, and realized the grandmother she'd found was the wrong person, the real family staring at them after spotting their belongings. That creepy stalking mission hit the dragon girl like a wave of panic, and she practically blurted to the old woman that she'd been posing as a princess, then begged her to be made queen, like it was the most natural thing in the world. That old grandmother's house looked like the perfect castle, so yeah, Durrami couldn't wait to make it their base of operations one day. She'd already pulled it off, but the old woman didn't let it slide. She snapped at the girl, furious that she even planned to touch the walls of her house before anything could happen. Which made Dorami swallow her pride and sincerely apologize for her outrageous stunt, and Jade spotted something strange about that wall, but she didn't say a word about it. And that snapped the dragon girl right back to why they came here in the first place. At last, Dorami finally blurted out everything she'd been clinging to, right as her grandmother stood there, waiting for the truth. But instead of apologizing for the mess, he said he wanted to help clean the house, whatever she needed, even if the old woman looked royally offended. So Dorami fired off his hyper beam and praised her with intimidating poses, and no matter how bold it was, it still didn't land. His grandmother snapped out of it, shook her head at his antics, and then finally agreed, letting the girls clean the house. Even as Dorami barked orders to wipe those dusty windows clean, that white dragon looked almost suspiciously eager. But yeah, the results don't lie. So he started mopping with everything he had, until the dust finally got knocked down for good. The grandmother strode out and told Jade to let Dorami sleep if she wanted things to be okay. Jade snapped a startled look over, and then, after a few minutes, she pushed the dragon girl to finally take a break, only to discover Dorami flat out refused, at least for now, because she had to see what she started all the way through to the very end. They hadn't even gotten lunch yet, but they kept ripping through the general cleaning anyway, and next stop was the attic, where everything could get messier than anywhere else in the whole house. But Dorami didn't hesitate. He bolted up there to the very spot where he'd hidden from her before. Suddenly, the room looked almost spotless, and even a comfy mattress with a soft blanket had appeared, like it was never there before, while Dormi was just freeloading. That's when they figured someone could show up here tonight, and sure enough, the cleaning finally got finished thanks to that person. Duri's stomach instantly growled, as if the whole mess had been answered, as if their prayers had finally been answered. That their grandmother had warned them to come down before the food turned cold, and that order made Dorami light up with happiness, then worry the moment she realized what it meant. He finally earned the right to dig into his own homemade food. The woman he'd deceived in the past didn't know how bad he wanted it, but turning down her offer would have been rude, so the lowly dragon gritted his teeth, followed Jade, and played along to keep up appearances, even if the good manners basically shoved them toward the meal. From the white dragon trapped in human form came a fierce, loud grumble. He was starving after skipping lunch. Dorami was so locked in on cleaning that it took his growling stomach to finally pull his focus. He seized this golden chance and dug into the hot soup the old woman had cooked just for them. His face lit up with a level of joy that felt unreal, and their grandmother clearly loved seeing it. She nudged Dormi and Jade to dig into the meal and enjoy every bite. When night swallowed the sky, the dragon girl finally climbed into bed, but she didn't want to sleep yet because she still felt like she had to help with the household chores, even after her grandmother told her to rest. Dorami looked half dead with sleep, her thoughts stuck on that ruined chance to apologize, and her eyes kept slipping shut. Sweet dreams spilled from her mind, and Jade only smiled, because the moment he thought about that dragon girl's hard work, he couldn't help it. Ever since they kicked off cleaning that morning, Jade couldn't stop staring as a blinding beam of light spilled in from the main street. He pictured the whole scene, Garnet right beside him, soaking in that insane view from the mountaintop, and just like that, it felt like their date was finally happening. Just as Jade's imagination drifted into a dreamy wonder, his grandmother tore it apart, turning it into a full-on screaming horror. yet Jade still figured she must have done something, since Dorami had already slipped off to sleep. But it turns out the old woman wasn't trying to wake her up at all. So out of nowhere, she snagged some of Jade's precious time. Jade got swept to the table and offered tea, and the grandmother poured herself a cup too, no sugar, because she claimed sweet stuff never suited her, leaving the adventurer, Dorami, genuinely stunned. Grandma slipped a bunch of candy onto the table and walked away. And yeah, she even grabbed donuts. So when Jade spotted them for the first time, he blurted out, "Are you waiting for someone tonight?" And the reply hit him hard. It wasn't for her or Dorami at all. Those donuts were meant for a guest who never showed up. Then the donuts were shoved straight into the dragon girl's hands, and right after that, her grandmother snapped at her for grabbing the walls. They did it to stop her from hurting herself and getting injured, plain and simple. The old woman wasn't truly mad at all. She was just worried sick for the young girl, unlike what went down outside in the blink of an eye. Jade's grandmother leaned in and asked if they lived nearby, and when she heard they were both from the Sundale Kingdom, her frown vanished and a grin lit her face. Turns out, Jade's grandmother was using this moment to thank her for something nobody saw coming. The old woman grinned because deep down she'd recognized the dragon girl from the very start. Remembering her year living with Dormi, she knew it was the kind of trust that was rock solid, enough to never mix up who she really was. Turns out she wasn't a stranger at all. She was the old woman's daughter, the one who used to live here with her until they finally flew the nest and went on living their own lives. Jade felt every bit of the grandmother's pain and admitted it was a messy, complicated heartbreak, especially since she doesn't have kids of her own yet, only imagining how that kind of loss would hit her when the day comes. Jade pictured her kids with Garnet, laughing with that pure joy. Then the sting hit, because she knew they'd run free someday and never look back. Of course, our protagonist broke down in tears, and even the grandmother started crying in this weird, shaky way, yet she still admitted she wanted to be with her grandchildren again, then swallowed it and chose not to pressure them, fully knowing that wanting them home would be selfish. Just when she thought she had a perfectly happy moment, her goofy roommate suddenly popped out of nowhere and gobbled up the leftovers right in front of her. On the second day, as the old woman gave a sad nod to the poor little girl with nowhere to go, the grandmother shut her mouth tight, feigned cluelessness, and acted like she didn't even see her. Up above, someone had left her candy on purpose, so she could munch it along with the rest, and that sweet little tradition was a memory she held onto like gold. Jade couldn't thank her enough for how much she helped her grow. Like her grandmother before her, she soaked in the joy of having a friend under her roof and felt grateful for it, yet she couldn't bring herself to tell Dorami, scared the same fear would hit her all over again, just like last time. After that, all Granny wanted was to spoil Dorami like her real granddaughter, but the white dragon misread her kindness as fury, and Dorami snapped and bolted in rage. Then everything spiraled from there. That's why the woman's parents finally exhaled, watching their daughter grow up whole and healthy, even after everything. They made every prayer at the wishing fountain count, because the girl's new guardian turned out to be genuinely kind-hearted. Jade's sure Dorami remembers her grandmother's kindness too, but the old woman doesn't bank on any proof or confirmation at all. Seeing her again is all it takes to completely shake her. After that late-night talk, Jade storms out of the room with his face full of worry, because now he finally hears the real story straight from Grandma's loving viewpoint. So now he makes his move. He decides to step in as the mediator between Dorami and her grandmother. On her third day in Linvok, Dorami snatches up a little basket of peaches, buzzing with excitement to finally hand them to her grandmother, because the best part, she doesn't eat a single one. And with that, Jade is 99% certain the old woman will finally do it, because she just realized how sick with regret she is, since this whole task was theirs in the first place. Jade keeps sprinting to find her grandmother, pushing hard to make sure Dormi apologizes sooner, because the longer it drags on, the harder it'll be to fix. She chooses to keep the secret from the dragon girl, then she follows the elderly woman's wishes with total respect. While pushing Dorami onto the right path at the same time, at least for now, it feels like a win-win, because that girl's determination to do whatever it takes won't quit. Because they snap to it the second they step onto the old woman's doorstep. Hand her the basket of fruits, and watch the anxiety torment her from the inside, clawing at her thoughts. And she steals her nerves and slips away to secretly call her grandmother. And bow down to apologize, admitting her old sins as if they burn. Then she slips into the attic, steals food whenever she can, and waits on edge for the old woman's answer. At last she gets the news from him, smiling like she's won, and asks a soft question, exactly the one the dragon girl has been craving since the very start. Dorami stared at the food she left for him, tears burning in his eyes as he told his grandmother, word for word, that it was all absolutely delicious. Whether the food was scorching hot or cold enough to freeze your soul. With a sharp smile, the old woman coldly told Dorami, "Come back anytime and try the food again," like it was nothing, and it reminded him he didn't even need to worry about it. He knew exactly why she didn't see the dragon girl as a naughty kid at all. Dorami finally understood, and for the first time since they met, her cooking genuinely hit him. The little girl wrapped her arms around her grandmother, beamed like the sun, and thanked her from the bottom of her heart for everything, so brightly it felt like the warmest smile the old woman had ever seen on this child. So she spilled her whole plan to a Romeo, make peach cake, and then dared him to eat every bite. How much she loved that wild, fluttering thrill in Elle's stomach as they rushed in to help the old woman. Then the three of them dug into the dessert like it was heaven, soaking up the final hours together before they had to split, and Dorami ended it by waving goodbye to his grandmother after handing her a gift. Later that night, Jade and the White Dragon rode back into the capital, and the whole place smelled like nostalgia, like the city itself was whispering old memories. They marched to the guild to do what Jade always did, drop the latest report and spin stories for the kids like magic. So when Garnet, his girlfriend, was gone, he didn't get lonely at all, because his fellow adventurers rushed in, grinning like crazy, and reminded everyone why he's such a selfless hero. They thanked Jade again for slaying the high-level monster boss and cutting down their numbers, finally giving them room to push forward in peace, no more dread that someone might get sacrificed next. Even though the real reason is just to get closer to Garnet, Jade still can't help but smile, because somehow, he's making a difference in people even if it's only a side effect. At last, the long-awaited second finally hits. Jade seizes her chance and steps in to meet the receptionist. He plays it cool, grins at her, and introduces himself like they're meeting for the first time, like nothing can rattle him. Garnet is still dazzling, and Jade's chest lifts with real joy as she feels it, plain and simple. Even though it's just an ordinary message in the guild chat. That $20 million compensation feels like just a tiny extra, easy to miss, and totally not the main focus. Because the truth is, the thing that matters most is that they finally get to talk again after all that time. Right after Jad and Dormi tore back to his home, they hustle through what they bought in record time so Jade can hand Garnet the gift later without a hitch. And Jade has to tell him something else. There's zero new info on Onyx. The neighboring guild's records are blank as soon as he vanished. At the very least, Jade scored a letter of introduction from the guild master to hit Vox's capital and dig up intel, and the clock's still ticking, so there's time to uncover it all. They show up right now, and Garnet is waiting there, ready to welcome them back with open arms. After all this time, Jade is finally thrilled to be back, no longer chasing the rush of reunion, but ready to show up for his lover and stand right by his side. But before we do that, Jade has to talk about something way more important first. Dead in the middle of the deep night, the three of them slipped into a restaurant for dinner. Then Jade leaned in and told Garnet the guild had nothing on Onyx's face in any commercial city across links. So Jade decided to hit the neighboring capital city next. Garnet didn't seem bothered by the missing details at all, because he refused to let Jade sprint into hunting for her father. He didn't even want to be alone, especially when they were nowhere in sight. Jade and Dormi felt the same pull, but Jade wouldn't quit. She kept fighting to stay glued to Garnet's side, determined to make him happy from the very depths of her heart. He had to track down Onyx, and he had to do it fast. Garnet's heart lit up from Jade's words, and his fears melted away in an instant. Then he blurted out to Onyx that Jade was his gentle, loving girlfriend and that he had to meet her. Jade's heart pounded with worry, because she feared Onyx would never sign off on their relationship. Even after Garnet promised her it would be fine, because her father couldn't possibly ignore her, Jade still couldn't shake the feeling that her sweet, stunning, heavenly boyfriend was just too perfect, like something didn't add up. So she couldn't stop spiraling over one terrifying thought. What if Onyx refused to hand his daughter over to him? After she finished eating, Dorami felt stuffed, with a mountain of peaches as dessert. The three of them started teasing her by poking right at the little girl's stomach, so big it looked like a dragon's, and then Garnet grinned, praising how many gifts Jade and Dorami had piled on. Even when Jade insisted it didn't bother her, she still felt like the gifts went a bit too far, so Garnet stepped in, promised Jade she'd genuinely value every single thing, and somehow found yet another way to show her gratitude. That lovesick boy wept anime tears, but danger crept in from the shadows, and his hand was twitching, terrified he might show up empty-handed and forget to buy a gift for his girlfriend's guardian. Still, Garnet grinned and thanked the little girl for letting her take a bite of those peaches. She basically treated it like a gift from the sky, though Jade was the one who forked out the money, so the dragon girl happily accepted it, especially for herself. Jade urged her to tell Garnet about her adventures, like an awesome gift she was handing over. Even the receptionist couldn't help it, she wanted in on the story too. The whole thing felt wildly whimsical, from the little girl's giggles that lit up the room to the white dragon slumping in her chair fighting sleep. Because man, it was getting super late, and Jade figured Garnet was hoping to do the same. But then he found out she blocked tomorrow off, taking a real day off so she could spend it with both of them. So yeah, she had to finish her shower before she even thought about sleeping, because Garnet was stuck without the chance to shower at her own place, and nothing public was open right now, like the universe was pushing her to make up for what went wrong in their first meeting. Their surprise neighbor Dorami invited Garnet over to her place for a shower on Jade's big celebration day. Jade shrugged it off as no big deal at first, especially because the bathroom was already specially made for her, until he finally caught what Dorami's invitation was really promising. Turns out it was Jade who'd run out of time. Punishment or no, she had to haul herself over with him and Garnet. Yet with a heavy heart, she still might stop just long enough to crack a joke about another S.H.I.E.L.D. hero showing up, and I'd say it straight to Jade anyway, because something was creeping in from right there. She swept in and took over the receptionist job, like the idea wasn't going to bother them at all. And yeah, Garnet would absolutely hate it, so much that she'd blush and shyly invite her boyfriend to tag along with them. When Garnet told her boyfriend TP to jump into the bath with them, her cheeks instantly flared red. Her boyfriend couldn't read her at all. Was she just messing around, or did she truly want to plan a joint bath, no matter what she decided? Finally, it rejected Garnet, because this hero looked worn out, even though he was wide awake and buzzing with more excitement than ever. Garnet kept going without her boyfriend to tag along, and Dorami rushed her off to the bathroom, only for Jade to shut that whole bathing as lovers plan down, like it wasn't happening yet. And it's even worse, she still couldn't just slip into holding Garnet's hand like it was nothing. Turns out it was way tougher than they thought. Bubbles puffed out her famous haze, so Dorami and Garnet laughed while they cleaned up, but Jade stayed in the room, forcing her focus into place so the shield wouldn't lift again. Garnet strutted out of the bathroom with a smug, satisfied grin, and honestly, it was a sight so good it felt unreal. Look at that young man, he's falling headfirst in love, and for a split second, he nearly lost his cool completely. And in the end, that selfless hero still won, because knowing he'd impress his heart all day and night was its own reward. Garnet promised they'd go on a date tomorrow, and escorting her became the whole point of it. So Jade chose to practice holding Garnet's hand like it was totally natural, and with just a little time, she instantly piled weight into her grasp. But while Garnet walked up smiling, basket in hand, she greeted them with a bright good morning, and then boom, food was right there. Jade couldn't stop smiling. Her cuteness was pure magic, and spending the day with Garnet felt like the exact definition of happiness, because now she had to face the moment of truth that would decide if she could hold his hand again. Garnet's training felt weirdly off. Jade's neck held her stare as if that secret was locked tight for now, and then Garnet snapped back to what she always does, the lunch she made for them. Jade burst into happy tears right in front of them, finally kicking off her best holiday ever. They were bouncing between places, stealing sweet little moments left and right as a brand new couple. At lunch, the two of them marched to the park with the dragon, and Jade practically buzzed with excitement, ready to smash down Neil Garnet's creation. And yeah, it was absolutely a blast watching her have the time of her life. She realized way too late that her shot at holding his hand had slipped right through her fingers. Plus, food won that battle first, so Jade dug into his homemade lunch, a whole lineup of different flavored sandwiches. Especially egg, ham, and cheese, while crunching lettuce and juicy tomatoes sizzled in the background. Jade and Dorami dug into lunch that Garnet made just for them. Turns out, that meal was the most insanely delicious thing Jade had ever tasted. Her mom would break down in happy tears the second she heard there might be tears of joy. Out of nowhere, Jade caught her boyfriend fixated on a theater sign nearby, and she couldn't help it. She urged him to ditch the plan and go watch a play next. Garnet totally wanted to head there too, and Jade was thrilled to go along with her. Because Jade swore this spot was the ultimate romantic date location. So the three of them squeezed in side by side, eyes locked on the stage as the play kicked off. Which ended up way more heartbreaking than Jade ever wished for, an aching romance between a knight and a princess, torn apart by the gap in their worlds. Whose love didn't come without a fight, because their lives were split by status. Jade couldn't help but feel grateful for her luck as the idea hit her. Sure, they might call her a princess, but if she had to bet her future on it, she could still pull it off. Jade kept getting crowned the hero as the game rolled on and new obstacles kept slamming into them, until one day, a marriage proposal from an enemy nation showed up, pushing a ceasefire so their kingdoms could behave. The princess swallowed her fear and accepted, and the knight, forced to, granted her wish, not realizing that this was the exact moment their journey would crash. Turns out the proposal was a trap. Enemy forces used the wedding ceremony as the perfect cover to strike. In the end, the knight carved through his foes one after another, until it all snapped into a final duel with the prince. He burst out as the winner, then paid for it with his life, spending his final seconds at the prince's side, while Jade and Garnet stood together, watching in silent grief. Shaken by the heartbreak playing out in front of them, it hooked everyone's attention. Yet for Jade, the grief of that night burned into him like fuel, and he finally found the courage to smash through the deadly obstacles that were trying to take his life. In the end, he gripped Garnet's hand tight, then summoned every ounce of courage to finally reach his ultimate goal. Suddenly, blam, a roaring snore shattered their plans, and the mighty hero totally face-planted his romantic quest again. Oh no, but it was time to bolt out of the theater. Jade Carey hoisted the dragon girl onto his back and trudged on, replaying every missed chance while the shadows kept creeping in, and yeah, holding hands would have to wait until the next date. That thought hit Jade the moment they slumped onto the spare bench, and he realized Garnet was staring at his neck, not giving him a single explanation, while the receptionist pressed him. When was Jade supposed to head out for their next journey? Garnet was days away from introducing Jade to her mother, just 2 weeks off, and with that date creeping closer, Jade's nerves spiked as she started wondering if she should finally spill the truth about their relationship. But Garnet felt rock solid, because all they had to do was prove how close they were and gratefully accept the blessings. That simple plan has Jade spinning visions in his head, what his future girlfriend would look like if all that somehow came true. Spark lit in his chest to finally ask the woman to hold hands, and lucky for him, Garnet is already thinking the same thing, just as fired up to make it happen. Jade finally exhales, because we all know he's been wrestling with inner turmoil, yet somehow Garnet looks just as wrecked, and she's got something huge to tell Jade. The receptionist doesn't waste a second. She pulls out a necklace and tells her boyfriend it's the gift he's been planning to give her. Jade snaps to it in an instant. The gorgeous pendant matches the exact Garnet design down to the detail. And then it all clicks, this necklace isn't just a match. It's the same kind Garnet's parents wore in the past, and that means it traces back to his mother, so this precious piece is really Onyx's. Jade can't stop worrying she might not deserve a gift that valuable, but Garnet won't back down. She's determined to hand it to the one she loves, and her mom says it's always the caring girlfriend who presents it. This necklace would turn their whole bond into something real, two hearts loving and valuing each other, and straight after, Garnet couldn't wait to get closer to Jade. And it hit Jade the same way. She grabbed that gift with all her heart, then looked Garnet in the eyes and swore they'd be together for eternity. After the dust settled and all the talk ended, the receptionist grabbed the necklace and was ready to slip it onto her boyfriend. So she slid into a spot that looked like she was cradling Jade in her arms. Yup, Jade's very first hug, and Garnet had to dig deep, burning through every ounce of strength just to keep herself from freaking out. Garnet simply slipped on the pendant. Come on, aren't they totally a couple? That heavenly little moment vanished in the blink of an eye, but Jade stayed over the moon after the receptionist handed over that priceless gift and the kind, heartfelt love behind it. A little later, she snapped awake, and there she was magically outside, watching all that chaos unfold like it was happening in the next second. The dragon girl already knew they'd be heading to Garnet's mother in 2 weeks, and the news lit her up, because it also meant she'd get to play with Marin again. The sun would drop in a totally different mood, and the air would chill in an instant, so Jade shot out her hand and grabbed her girlfriend, pushing her to head home together right now. Garnet shot Jade a dazzling smile, slipped her hand into his, and laced their fingers together as they headed home to wrap up this huge date, while the normies lost it laughing, and the whole team backed them full force. A few days later, Jade and Dorami stormed into the guild hall in Linvox's capital, hunting down every lead on where Onyx had vanished to. Just when it looked like the argument was done, Jade leaned in and told Dorami, "Don't rush. Guild staff will need 5 days to dig up any Onyx visit logs. Good news, right now they're not swamped, because the whole city has locked onto the king's birthday festival, and the real mystery is how long it'll run. The answer, it's scheduled to hit around 3 o'clock each day for several days." Dorami and Jade finally get a breather to hunt for souvenirs and gifts, because Jade's grand introduction to Mother Garnet is coming in just 10 days. Even so, Jade can't stop her nerves from spiraling as she prepares to meet her potential mother-in-law. But she realizes it's a sign they're right on the edge of finally getting their blessings, one wild, random run-in that changed everything. Dormi noticed Jade glowing with fresh confidence, like everything was finally going to work out, especially after he managed to hold Garnet's hand a few days earlier. Jade listened to the dragon girl's thrilled chatter as she spotted a crowd packed with people, and the moment the signal hit, they sprinted straight for the spot where the spirit was. Naturally, the festival roared with life. What's the fun without the buzzing shops and packed stalls? The dragon girl dove in and tried to scope out nearly everything, until her energy finally started to fade. Dorami took a big sip of the juice she grabbed earlier, smiling like she'd just won, then turned to share some with the creature named Mamachi. Turns out the peach seed he's been lovingly tending is called Mamachi ***, and right now, they're bunking at Garnet's place until they can get back home. But the dragon girl won't just stop there. She's hunting for the perfect gift for Mamachi, and then she spots a booth. Turns out what really hooked her was a contest to crown the funniest kid among all the young girls, and Dorami decides to jump in right now, ready to flex her achievements for Marin. It's labeled an event, but really it's a full-on national showdown, and if she steps in, her heart's set on one thing, snatching that gold. So Jade storms up to the event receptionist and makes the disaster official, and pushes her to grab the right costume and weapons if she wants a shot at victory. Yet Dorami shrugs it off, swearing her glasses with the handle are all she needs to claim the champion title. It looks like Laurette's the winner, because that dress is pure magic. Garnet could totally work for the contest, but Jade is convinced Dorami should buy something that matches her outfit perfectly. Dorami buys into the plan fast. Someone sells it as a chance to try something new, chase unforgettable memories, and step into the competition. Jade needs one last shove for her to pull off the trick, so she persuades the dragon girl that Marin will light up more if she spins killer fashion tales, just like everyone expected. So it's shopping time again, both of them heading into that clothing store like it's their next mission. The newbie contestant snatches the perfect accessory to swing the odds in his favor. Yeah, a skull, all teeth and intimidation, not laughs, yet Jade can't bring herself to call it a bad idea, even if it could tank her chances. And right after the Dorami call, it's obvious he isn't into her at. A young girl named Dell popped up to help shoppers find what they needed. No, it's not because she's some lost kid ripped from her mother like the white dragon guest. Turns out Dell is helping her parents by working the store and assisting the customers. Jade thinks it's a total win. She reckons she can get the kind of feminine advice she wants from her, so she asks for accessory recommendations to match her dress, even if that's not exactly what Dorami had in mind. Dell brandishes a moon pendant and swears it's the perfect upgrade for the competition. For some reason, the second Dell hears that the competition's disasters are zeroing in on the gold prize. She gets hyped and even pitches the idea of betting on doing makeup and fixing nails. It's no shock the dragon girl won't lift a finger, but Dell still isn't finished. She shoves Dorami to actually listen, because this advice comes from the same person who crushed the competition and took first place last year. Then the shocking twist hits, and Dorami is left totally stunned like, wait, what? But the lesson doesn't stop. Now it's all about strutting in high heels and stepping with pure, graceful confidence. Then Dell steps in, shows the dragon girl exactly how it's done, and that first place win hits like a guaranteed knockout. Unlike Dorami, who needs tons of practice, she stays irresistibly sweet in Dell's eyes, and when Dorami gets that compliment, she doubles down, praising her right back and urging her on for the competition as their conversation keeps rolling. After stacking up countless battles, Dorami couldn't shake the worry about her new rival. She promised she'd never give up first place, no matter what hit her, because fear was eating at her, and Dorami, that amazing girl, was only there to help her parents out. Don't worry, we'll come get you, they promised, while they still insisted that high heels were the real key to winning. On a bright, sunny day, kind-hearted Dell even offered the enemy shoes, only for Dorami to recoil at them, even though she couldn't bring herself to refuse Dell's request. So Jade jumped in, bought a pair from the store, and instantly lit up the owner's daughter with joy. In the final round, two rivals slammed into each other's gaze, both set on proving, once and for all, that only they deserved the win. With a grin, the confident champion mocked her opponent's music, then proclaimed total dominance and strode onto the stage. With every step, she oozed pure elegance, repeating the same flawless strut that carried her to last year's victory. Instead of sitting around, the challenger unleashed her progress, refined her walk through sheer endless practice. Right in the middle of her performance, disaster hit when her heel snapped. Then the rival shot over instantly, no hesitation at all. She flashed a smile anyway, but the harm was obvious. A shattered heel was barely holding up her last shot. She gripped the broken heel with trembling hands, then paused as the crowd fell into stunned silence, whispering like they couldn't believe what they'd just seen. She wrestled between pride and gratitude, then leaned in and practically shoved her rival away, telling her to take her rightful spotlight. The younger girl fought back, and it hit her, yesterday's encouragement, and the whole year she'd poured into training. Without a second to hesitate, she shoved her own shoes at him, burning with determination to return the kindness she'd just been given. With a bright grin, the younger girl snatched up her courage and handed over her shoes right away, daring him to give her some back. She shut down any sympathy, insisting going barefoot felt easier, while she stayed completely unbothered by the price she was paying. Watching her vanish through the curtain, then the elder girl straightened her spine, ready to step out with pride. Booming applause exploded as soon as she finished backstage, and her friends surged forward with bright, joyful music, lifting her spirits to the sky. Tears welled in her eyes as she finally got it. Real victory doesn't come from competing, it comes from kindness. Applause thundered through the venue as she strode up with unshakable confidence, stepping into borrowed heels for her big performance. Later that day, laughter filled the park as she grinned and handed him her prize. Without a warning, she bolted into motion, emotions ripping free before she could stop them. Breathless, she demanded answers. Why? She threw the competition away, and the other girl just smiled back softly. Even after she realized she'd already lost, that rival still threw her support without a shred of regret, because saving her was worth everything. With joy blazing in her eyes, she clutched the sparkling prize, because it was a special gift meant to seal friendship forever. Warm praise flew back and forth like pure music, and every step lit up both of their hearts, way past whatever the final scores said. With mutual respect, they forged a bond, turning rivalry into something deeper, stronger, and built to last. The tension crumbled as the once rival girls broke into genuine smiles, standing side by side with zero regrets. Days later, the Guildhall was buzzing again, because their adventure didn't stop with the contest stage, it just kept roaring on. At the counter, Jade snapped that his patience was done, while Garnet stayed cool, flipping through his quest report like it was no big deal. She studied the mana stone like a pro, and he couldn't help but stare, silently stunned by her focused, graceful way. One look from her snapped the armor off his heart, professionalism and all, and she charm-struck him so hard he melted. Even after piling up riches, Jade's real treasure was the one thing that kept pulling him back again and again. As he scoured the park for Dorami, something felt off, even though she was smiling like everything was fine. Jade clocked something was wrong with Dorami. She wasn't her usual bright, bubbly self around the other kids. When he shouted her name, she lit up with a warm smile, yet her eyes flashed with something she didn't want him to see. She swore everything was fine, but Jade saw right through it. Her sadness was written all over her face. With a reluctant sigh, she finally confessed. Her friends weren't just telling tales anymore. They'd turned into real adventurers, and now her stories were being outshined by actual quests. Terrified of becoming obsolete, Dorami blurted, "If you all leave, who's going to listen to my stories?" Dorami finally cracked and admitted her weakness. Without Jade backing her up, her stories fell flat, hollow, and powerless. Jade stepped up and proposed a brand new route for short missions, an envoy's way to carve out a personal adventure, no limits. He reassured her, after just one mission, she'd win everyone's respect all over again. Fueled by his faith in her, Dorami vowed with fire in her chest she was going to become his official envoy. Eager to prove she was more than just a team player, she kicked off her first solo mission, Iren's. Nerves juggled in his chest, but Dorami still marched into the tailor's shop, ready to grab Jade's order with pure, proud confidence. With a radiant smile, she thanked the tailor, and you could feel her confidence start to bloom right there, in the light of that moment. In the wash house, those familiar words of praise struck like sunshine, and she felt it. She was really doing this all by herself. She longed to dive back into storytelling again, powered by real missions and hard-earned experiences. The moment joy lit up her chest, a vicious hiss tore through the quiet, like danger lunging at her without warning. With his fists up in the air, Dorami roared at the bigger cat, demanding it back off and stop picking on the smaller one. The cat growled like a warning signal, and Dorami locked in, brimming with courage as battle fury flashed in her nervous eyes. She hesitated in the middle of her threat and offered surrender terms, but the cat snarled and chose violence over peace. The cat erupted forward, and Dorami screamed as she thrashed, getting dragged upward by those furious claws. Her sword was gone, her pride was bruised, and she just stood there helpless as the cat sprinted off, victorious. Dorami lunged after the cat as it streaked up the stairs with her sword in hand, screaming in furious bursts. Panting hard and utterly spent, she finally slammed to a stop, wiped out, and her spirit was more shattered than she ever thought possible. With strangers all around and streets she didn't recognize, she suddenly realized she'd gotten lost along the way. Right when panic tried to sink in, a huge hand landed on her head, so gentle it completely caught her off guard. She whipped around in shock, because that voice sounded familiar, warm, and somehow impossible to hear in this place. Right as despair started talking in, Durrami spotted a familiar silhouette rushing toward her, her childhood caretaker, sirens blaring. Durrami storms into Old Guild Alley and, out of nowhere, snaps back into a reunion with Swirn, the ace apothecary. Swirn was busy brewing medicine when Durrami hit the perfect timing to bring up an urgent personal problem. They link up and head down the streets together, knowing the night is full of quiet, creeping dangers. Hand in hand, Durrami can feel those feelings they won't say out loud, getting heavier with every single step. Back home, Durrami spins a made-up tale, hiding her real feelings behind a lie about stolen swords. She came in swinging, sure she'd prove herself, but fate betrayed her. She wound up stranded, swordless, and completely lost. Confidence drained from her as she swallowed defeat, convinced her failures had finally written her out of the adventure stories. He met her gaze with calm eyes and told her the truth. Every adventurer trips at some point and gets lost, eventually. Remembering every mistake he'd made, he leaned in and showed her the truth. Falling down is how you get stronger. When she heard him, it hit her. Growth doesn't come from winning. It comes from surviving the blows and turning hardship into lessons. Durrami took Sverren's words to heart, swore to level up into something stronger, and thanked him for the help. Right when they were about to start the day, a sudden knock slammed into the calm and shattered the moment. Garnet stood at the door, cradling something with tender care, her face calm but somehow full of secrets. Mamachi was cradled in her arms, and Durrami stared. This tiny little creature hadn't been seen in weeks. They greeted her with open arms, thanking her for her kindness, and staring in disbelief at how Mamaki had exploded into growth since they last parted. They're beaming from ear to ear, and the whole crew has one plan. After their break, they're diving into a celebratory dinner to mark the reunion. Garnet lit up at their energy, then the conversation smoothly shifted to the journey that's coming next. Onyx's sudden disappearance had everyone on edge, but she dropped a hint that could lead straight to a clue if they dared to chase it. Digging deeper, he uncovered the truth. Onyx had tapped into the guild services 14 years ago. At first, the guild was capped at 12 years, but then they dug deeper into the coverage records, and what they uncovered shocked everyone. While they dug through the old records, they suddenly realized Onyx could have kept crossing those far-off borders for years. While most people stayed put, Onyx craved the open road, crossing nations on foot just to chase the wild rush of a real adventure, solo. Believing in him, they vowed, "We won't stop until we uncover the one who lit a fire in our hearts." They dreamed of Onyx coming back in a blaze of glory, right there among friends, telling story after wild story beneath the sparkling night sky. When departure day finally hit, the train roared to life and blasted forward, dragging them straight into the start of something way bigger. Durrami erupted in cheers, hugging Mamachi close, and felt the finish line of their journey was right around the corner. On the train, excitement crackled in the air, yet thick silence pressed down, and some hearts raced for reasons far deeper than the passing scenery. Garnet confessed her unease, and her chest felt heavy, not sick, just buzzing with raw, anxious anticipation. She finally spilled the truth. This wasn't just a visit. They were coming to her home, and they'd meet her mother together. Even though he told her to pretend it wasn't true, she still ached to show him off, like the real deal, someone truly important. Hands pressed to her chest, Garnet confessed that he meant the world to her. Overwhelmed but burning with purpose, he made a promise to level up, harder for her sake and for the future they'd build together. Her gentle laugh broke the tension like glass, and somehow it told him, loud and clear, that he was already more than enough. As the train rattled forward, their minds drifted to cozy warmth, gift boxes, and handmade surprises waiting just around the corner. They started knitting side by side, each making one glove, so their hands could say what their hearts meant, and still, though. Even with gloves on, Jade confessed he was still fighting just to finish a scarf. After his 10th brutal try failed again, he was ready to sink into shame. Then Garnet smiled and praised him gently. Even though Garnet wasn't done yet, Jade forced himself to work harder, pushing every ounce of effort for her. When someone asked Garnet for measurements, she froze for a second, like her heart was so packed with emotion that words just couldn't keep up. With cheeks burning, she shyly asked to hold his hand, craving that closeness more than anything as exact as measurements. Garnet slowly reached for his hand, her touch light as a whisper, and her eyes sparkled with pure, quiet love. When Jade's fingers locked with his, her heart hammered so hard she couldn't tell if it was love or just a strange kind of fate testing her. As she measured each finger with careful hands, Jade trembled, joy crashed over her, and the sheer intimacy of it nearly stole her breath. He shyly nodded and promised to check hers too, his nerves screaming, though he kept insisting it was just for knitting. In silence, they locked eyes, no more excuses, just raw emotion quietly sparking back and forth. As he gripped her hand, Jade couldn't help but stare, warm, graceful, and dressed in pure elegance. Her gentle smile erupted into laughter, and his careful touch accidentally tickled her harder than either of them expected. Even with that awkward apology on her tongue, Garnet grabbed his confidence and calmly told him, right then, that everything had finally settled and her nerves were gone. Later, they all piled into lunchtime on the train, tearing into those insanely tasty Garnet sandwiches and soaking up the ride together. Right as Durrami reached for jam, the train slammed into a violent jolt, and everyone's snack vanished mid-bite as chaos exploded. The train slammed to a stop, and the conductor shouted for any brave adventurer on board to help. Breaking news hit: an enormous monster was charging full speed toward the train, ready to swallow every passenger alive. Jade barrels inside and spots a terrifying monster called an Iron Eater chewing up the train right in front of her. The Iron Eater chews through metal like it's nothing, ripping open armored trains stronger than steel and throwing everyone on board into deadly danger. Even without a proper request or a single reward, Jade refuses to back down. She's determined to wipe out that monster herself, no payment needed. Jade clenches her jaw and demands directions right now, because she's determined to shield everyone before that monster can reach the passengers. Passengers stare as he passes, and Jade holds her tongue, swearing that no monster will wreck their trip or touch their safety. Jade flashes a confident farewell, and as he walks away, the passengers erupt in cheers, while one woman stays silent, watching him closely. At the monster's hideout, Jade rushes in to inspect every detail. Luckily, the railway damage stays strangely light. No hesitation, he barrels forward, and the first thing on his mind is yanking the Iron Eater off those tracks before it's too late. With jaw-dropping strength, he rips the monstrous creature off the ground, leaving the train crew stunned by sheer overwhelming power. Jade cranks up raw power and unleashes a brutal strike, blasting the beast away with an explosive blast. A gut-punching shockwave tears across the field, and the Iron Eater gets obliterated in a thunderous explosion. From the window, shocked passengers and staff just froze in silence, staring at the sheer, overwhelming force. They never saw it coming. Cheers burst across Jade as the crew scrambles to patch things up, and Jade just stays calm, telling them he's totally fine. Before he slid back into his seat, Jade shot Durrami and Garnet a heartfelt thank you for pushing him forward with nothing but real encouragement and support. Garnet leans in and praises him under her breath, her gratitude shining bright as she's thoroughly impressed, and Jade, shy but beaming, returns the smile like it's the best thing that's happened all day. As the train roars back to life, Jade keeps her smile to herself, and that moment hits like the best reward she could ever dream of. That evening, they hunted for a place to stay, but with the rails under repairs, only one room was left open. Jade figured he'd end up sleeping outside, but Garnet calmly offered to share her spot, catching him off guard with unexpected kindness. A gentle look sat on her face, but steel ran beneath it. Jade, their savior, wasn't about to sleep outside alone on her watch. With gratitude blazing in his chest, he accepted the offer. Then heat rushed to his face as a single thought hit. One room meant he'd be stuck close all night. The moment Jade steps into the room, her breath catches in a wave of nerves, because there's only one bed, and that's it. Jade offers the floor like it's a lifesaver, because sleeping in the same bed with two girls feels straight up impossible. Just as Durrami tried to catch his breath, he drops out instantly, so Garnet gets the whole bed to herself. Garnet clocked Jade fumbling awkwardly with his spot, and her calm, steady voice caught him off guard, then landed a soft, gentle suggestion. With a quick, knowing nod, Garnet lets it slip. She's expecting Jade to curl up in the bed right next to her. Garnet gently urges them to huddle together, but Jade freezes for a second, unsure what to say then. Jade's panic spikes. She thinks it's going wrong. Then she misreads his concern as he blurts a compliment about her scent, and he can barely finish the sentence before he cuts himself off. Flustered, he hears Garnet admit she wouldn't mind sleeping beside him, and his brain nearly blows a fuse. His thoughts spiraled out of control, and he kept debating Durrami's take, desperately trying to calm himself. Moments later, they fall still, side by side in silence. Jade stays wide awake, and she can't believe this is actually happening. Jade lies close, but the warmth and scent of the Garnets hit him like a wave, stealing his sleep completely. Eyes stretched wide and heart pounding, Jade realizes there's zero chance he'll get any peaceful sleep tonight. Exhaustion finally catches him, and as his eyes start to droop, he instinctively leans even closer to her. Next day hits, and even with her exhaustion clinging to her bones, Jade drags herself to Laboon, where Garnet and Dorami are waiting in her hometown. Garnet ushers them inside, Jade lingers in a painfully stiff awkwardness, and Dorami beams as she snatches the offer without a single second of hesitation. They pull up to Garnet's childhood home, and Jade just goes still, watching it all hit her hard, like this place suddenly means everything. Garnet leans in, asking what's wrong, and Jade squirms with nerves as she admits the place feels sacred, because she was raised here. To calm him down, Garnet leans in and whispers that it's just an old house, and her mom isn't home. Hand steps inside. When a young girl spots Dorami, she darts across the room, buzzing with excitement as everyone gathers for the reunion. Joy erupts in the room as old friends come back together, and Dorami squeezes her friend in a tight hug, desperate to spill every single detail. Garnet pours tea like a pro, and Dorami's face lights up with pure joy. Everything feels calm, cozy, and warm. Jade clocked Dorami's sudden growth, and Garnet admitted it. She's been grinding nonstop just to earn her way onto their adventures. The girls can't wait to team up for a quest. Jade promises, "I'll keep you safe," and Garnet hesitates, then gives a cautious nod. Laughter spills in, and Garnet even lets them go, but only after tomorrow. The girls erupt with pure excitement, and then, why? As he watches, Jade prays this trip turns into a sweet memory for them, and for him, too. In the kitchen, Garnet moves with total calm as she cooks, and that cozy sizzle fills the still room like music. Jade leans over her cooking like it's mesmerizing magic, eyes locked on every move. She looks drop-dead gorgeous, but there's something off in her expression that makes your stomach tighten. Worried out of his mind, he asks if she's all right, and Garnet admits her own heart is still pounding too. Nerves rattled Jade as he worried he looked strange, but Garnet leaned in and assured him with a gentle calm. He looked perfect from the inside out. The second she tells him he's handsome, Jade's brain basically short-circuits, and her raw honesty crashes over his awkward heart like a tidal wave. Garnet swears her praise is the real deal, and Jade can't help it. She blushes so hard she nearly melts, crushed by how kind and honest she's being. She keeps going, praising Jade's reliability, her kindness, and that calm, steady way she never panics, because she trusts her with everything. With his heart exploding, Jade slams to the floor in pure shock and blurts out his love like there's no tomorrow. Still sprawled on the floor, he breathlessly thanks her for choosing him, and his feelings spill out in full force. Garnet breaks into a gentle smile and pats his head. Jade jerks back, shocked by how suddenly close and warm she feels. Garnet's cheeks burned, but she stayed truthful. She's basically wishing Jade would pet her gently too, just like she did earlier. Jade reaches out and slips his hand through her soft hair, nerves sparking in him while he's completely, utterly captivated. He's caught in her radiant smile, and the moment he realizes he gets to keep her happiness all to himself, it hits him like everything he ever wanted is right there. The crew beams after their adventure, dinner's already on the table, and Garnet's mom should be pulling up any minute. Right then her mother glides in like nothing's wrong, drops a calm "I'm home," and casually announces she's back as. The moment the door swings open, Jade's eyes widen. This elegant woman is none other than Garnet's mother. The moment Jade stepped inside the home, she saw Garnet's mother, graceful, kind, and softly radiating calm like the whole room exhaled. Nervous but unshakable, he squared his shoulders when Garnet's mom eyed the strange visitors, like she was already dying to know who they were. He didn't hesitate, he blurted out his name, and Durham's bright, friendly tone instantly thawed the whole room. Durham flashed a compliment and asked for a handshake, catching Sandra off guard for a second, then pleasantly winning her over. Seeing how open and real Durham was, Sandra's smile burst across her face as she soaked in the warm, genuine affection pouring from that energetic young girl. Trying to make a lasting impression, Jade handed Garnet's mother gifts with pure sincerity. He busted out a huge spread of supplies, and everyone froze, because he went so overboard prepping that nobody even had a chance to feel like anything was out of place. Even with all his effort, anxiety slithered in. Jay started second-guessing himself, wondering if what he was doing felt natural or just way too much. Sandra lit up at the gifts, but Jade stayed tight-lipped, quietly panicking that one slip could expose his intentions toward her daughter. Even with a smile on, Jade couldn't shake the fear that she'd still never get approval, or the real, heartfelt acceptance she was desperately hoping for someday. Dinner was served, but Jade couldn't touch a bite. Nervous tension clung to her as Sandra dug into Garnet's warm, home-cooked meal. Even though the talk kept rolling, Jade couldn't focus. Her mind got slammed by the huge topic nobody dared say out loud. Inspired by Durham's gesture, Jade forced her mind to sharpen as she stared at Garnet's calm, steady smile. He finally rose to his feet, voice rock steady, and made up his mind to tell the truth and square up to the problem head-on. Just as he was about to push on, Sandra cut in out of nowhere, leaving Jade stunned and reeling, questioning every move he'd made earlier. Jade pulled himself together and thanked Sandra with real sincerity for helping Marin through that brutal time. Sandra smiled like she'd been expecting this all along, confessed she already knew everything, and thanked him back with a warm, steady voice. Jade clenched his resolve, silently reminding himself that he would stay honest and win her trust completely. Without pausing for a second, he confessed their relationship out loud, making it crystal clear that he and Garnet were officially dating now. After a long pause, Sandra let out a small, gentle smile, quietly confirming it all and sealing their bond with calm, approving peace. Jade's jaw dropped. Garnet and Sandra already had the full picture, and they backed her 100% with zero hesitation. Sandra's calm smile soothed Jade, and slowly, almost like it snuck up on her, Jade realized her approval had already been granted without a single word. When they pressed Sandra for the truth, she didn't dodge it. She confirmed her blessing and admitted she could feel the real love between those young hearts. Garnet and Jade finally laid their hearts on the table, speaking out loud the commitment they'd been quietly sharing all along. With Sandra's full trust on his shoulders, Jade swore he'd guard Garnet's happiness and keep their bond growing strong from here on out. With Sandra's blessing finally in hand, the tension shattered, smiles burst across everyone's faces, and they were ready to dig into their meal. The very next morning, Jade and Darm stumbled into a bright, calm start. Garnet was smiling at them like it was the best day ever. Durham tracked that mouth-watering aroma, and Garnet told them breakfast was already waiting, perfectly prepared and warmed up with real care just for them. Staring at that breakfast like it was calling his name, Durham sprinted downstairs, practically vibrating with hunger. What? While they ate, Garnet dropped the truth. This soup came from the gift Jade made, turning all of her hard work into something that finally felt unforgettable. Durham pitched the idea of going out. Garnet nodded along no conditions, as long as everyone felt good about it. Jade asked for a tour of the town, and everyone nodded in agreement. Right then, plans snapped into place fast. Jade lit up at the chance, treating this trip like a once-in-a-lifetime hometown date that actually meant something. While they strolled, Jade and Garnet clasped hands in total silence, soaking in each other's warmth like it was pure comfort. They talked about hitting up those familiar places again, and Jade stayed locked in, soaking up the calm, gentle warmth of Garnet's hand. He rolled up to a massive estate bursting with bright, blooming flowers, then stopped dead just to soak in the vibrant garden like it was made for his eyes. Side by side, Jade stopped to compliment the town, praising its calm, nature-filled atmosphere that soothed everything around them. Durham's eyes landed on the wall drawings, and Garnet lit up as she revealed how this town breathes for plants and turns that passion into art. They pushed past the brick wall and locked onto a massive mansion beyond, clean, grand, and impossible to miss. The group finally uncovered the truth. This was Kamshi's home, and it used to belong to a legendary painter from centuries ago. Garnet lit up and told them where the painter had gone and what sparked his art, pointing out the murals that covered the old walls, while her father once stared at those paintings, and it lit a spark in him, so he left for the road and became an adventurer. The whole group went silent in front of that massive old house, soaking up every crack of age, every rumored story, and every ounce of artistry. Out of nowhere, Durham practically burst with excitement and snapped Jade over, begging him to rush inside the nearby shop and check what was waiting in there. Jade couldn't believe his eyes. There was a tiny statue of him on display, carved with insane detail and pure flair. Jade confirmed the statue looked just like him, and he couldn't help feeling proud, even while a wave of awkward embarrassment hit him. To his shock, Garnet stepped up and offered to buy the figure, showing her affection in the softest, sweetest way. Jade hesitated, but Dorm treated that moment like pure luck and snapped it up without a second thought. They kept browsing side by side, the cheerful vibe kept swelling, and as they strolled on, laughter burst through the air inside. In a buzzing toy shop, Garnet's mind snapped back to the day her father dragged her here to hunt down art supplies. Jade spotted familiar drawings at Garnet's home and instantly realized her childhood had been packed with creative sketches. She remembered tearing her hair out trying to draw real, serious portraits, while her father kept mugging with ridiculous, silly faces. Even with her cheeks burning, Garnet was sure her father beamed with pride, so she handed her drawings to the townspeople like she was showing off his love. Tension snapped tighter and tighter as they grilled Onyx about it, 12 years of silence with zero contact, and it was downright terrifying. Jade made a silent vow she'd hunt down Onyx and claw out every clue about where he was. A tense silence stretched between them, and their eyes screamed with thoughts they couldn't say, pure, shared worry. Garnet thanked him and softly reminded Jade that every second of their time together truly mattered. They stood shoulder to shoulder, fingers laced tight, ready to take on whatever fate threw at them, together. Jade soaked up peaceful days in Garnet's hometown, slowly forging a real connection with Sandra one delicious, shared meal at a time. Elsewhere, Durrami and Morin laughed as they blitzed monsters together, sharpening their skills and bonding hard through non-stop field quests. Garnet's family warmth wrapped everyone up in comfort, turning every second aboard Laboon into something that felt truly, deeply important. After 3 peaceful days, the whole crew met at dawn, and the moment felt electric, ready to tear themselves away from Laboon. Sandra smiled like she meant it and waved them off, grateful they'd come, even though their time together was gone way too fast. Before they split up, everyone swore they'd be back in a snap, stacking stories and gifts for Garnet, and Sandra crushed her in a tight, heartfelt hug. He's telling her, stay warm and don't catch a cold in this winter, and that message hits her hard. She's moved. She shot back a gentle hug and whispered to Sandra that she'd take care of everything. Out of nowhere, Sandra swooped in and kissed Garnet on the cheek. Jade froze on the spot, mouth open, cheeks blazing red from sheer shock, and, amused, she leaned in and told me their family's tradition, those cheek kisses everyone swore by. Smiling through Jade's flustered reaction, Garnet held her smile and quietly wondered what that quick goodbye kiss really meant. Jade secretly craved to kiss Garnet too, but she kept doubting the moment would ever feel right. Their departure got announced, and Jade's thoughts got cut off fast as everyone rushed to the station platform. Everyone leaned out the train window and cheered, swearing they'd be back, while Garnet and Morin laughed and waved them off, right up until the... As the train vanished into the mountains, Jade clutched his chest and held onto the farewell for dear life. The very next day after they got back, Morin sank into silence, staring out the window as crayons lay spilled beside her. Jade pushed for a full week of rest, saying they still weren't over that brutal journey back home. Morin slumped over her sketches, dramatically insisting that art had sucked the life clean out of her body. Once she got invited out, she lit up instantly, then showed off her real goal browsing weapons all around town. She totally blindsided him and demanded they hit the armor shop too, straight up like a real adventurer in training. Jade leaned in and softly asked Durrami if her new hunger for adventuring was more than just curiosity. Jade was shocked he caught it, but then she laughed it off, because it had always been obvious in the way she acted. He stirred up that memory of how hyped she was during the quest, then pressed her, "Will you talk to the king?" Harami admitted she wanted to become one too, but her voice cracked mid-sentence, and you could hear the hesitation and doubt creeping in. With her hand resting on her dragon crest, she finally blurted out the truth. She was terrified she didn't measure up. Jade told Durrami that dragons could grab crests too, and the idea hit her like a lightning bolt, because she'd never seen it coming until this very moment. He talked about a rare monster that could wield flower crests, and Durrami's eyes lit up with pure wonder. Jade uncovered the crest, and the crystal orb's origin too, tracing it to a terrifying, legendary beast called the Devil Devil. Devil trees dangled magical fruit before them, but grabbing that power came with terrifying risks that could wreck both body and mind. The wild part is, Manstone power by itself could hand out crests safely, even to monsters like Durrami, not just humans. Durrami finally caught on that a flower crest could be real, and the dream in her heart wasn't a dead end. With Jade's support fueling her, she burst into joyful cheers, believing right now that she could finally become a true adventurer. Her grit lit a spark in Jade that burned through his childhood memories, pulling up the same hunger for ambition and the thrill of chasing it. She bolted to change into her clothes, while he mapped out a meeting with the king to get official approval. Even with her dragon form giving her confidence, he still prayed she'd master real self-defense skills to stay safe. Durrami strutted down in her best dress, and Jade stepped in, boldly promising to keep chasing those dreams. Outside the royal castle, Jade couldn't stop wondering, would the king actually approve a dragon's wish to chase adventure? Mistaking his arrival for Jade's, the king decided she'd come to claim the throne as the next successor. Jade politely refused, then explained that the Raimai Natty had come today for a personal favor. Durrami stood tall before the monarch, and after what felt like ages, he finally greeted the king with a formal bow. Time passed, and the king clocked Arami the second she stepped in, firing off a question. Had she been behaving since their last meeting? Standing tall with zero doubt, Durrami boldly demanded his permission to become an official adventurer. Even with surprise on his face, the king grilled her about why she needed anything at all, then reminded her she was already shielded by royal protection. Durrami flashed a respectful smile, thanked them from the bottom of her heart, and admitted she was itching to chase adventure just to spread joy. Jade's relentless drive to help people lit the spark for her wish and left an unforgettable mark on her heart. Dorami told Jade how her quest lit a fire in her, and that afterward she couldn't help but push herself to become strong and actually useful too. She dropped into a deep bow before the king, pouring her heart into a real, sincere plea, begging for official permission to chase her dream, and wow, was that bold. Watching her grow, the king gave her his stamp of approval, then declared her a future adventurer for the whole kingdom. With gratitude burning in her voice, Dorami swore she'd make it, never let down the ones who believed in her. Right as she celebrated, the king spun toward Jade and shot a warning look, like he had something huge to say. The king praised Jade's guardianship, placing his faith in her to keep guiding Dorami along the path she chose. Breathing hard with excitement, Dorami followed Jade straight into the guild, buzzing with one burning question: would her future finally be the right one? The young girl burst into cheers after the king nodded and gave her the green light to register as an adventurer. Suddenly, Marin's advice hit her like a spark, and she breezed through her documents, ready to lock in a flawless registration. Money was running out and the details were fuzzy, so she panicked hard until he stepped in and offered his help right away, no hesitation. Because she had no true name, she finally chose to officially claim the one he gave her. Jade slipped in her fake birthday and his family surname, finished the registration, and stepped straight into his family like it was fate. Seeing that she'd been walking the same road as Marin, Dorami grinned and blurted that her 12th birthday was the start of it all. Jade leaned in with a warm, happy birthday, and the moment she smiled, so bright it could light up the room, his thoughtful gesture hit her right in the heart. When they asked about her hometown, she started talking about the bone-chilling cold and how she grew up living with an older woman who felt like a mystery. Raimai blew the secret wide open. Turns out she could transform into a dragon, and then he taught her his language, plus how to live day to day. With a quiet, restless mind, Dorami couldn't help but wonder, could that kind, powerful woman really be her mother? The woman shoved the Raimai into safety, then hammered one warning into her: never reveal her dragon form again. After everything ended, Dorami found herself alone, kicking off her journey with zero guidance and no clear destination in sight. Because Jade's real birthplace stayed a mystery, she boldly put Kassad's village down as her official home. Dorami strode up to the guild, confidence blazing, and proudly announced, "I'm Dorami, AD." Even with the whole crowd staring her down, she stayed ice calm. She'd rehearsed every step until that perfect registration felt inevitable. To lock in her registration, Dorami pressed her dominant hand onto the orb to read her crest. As her palm grazed the ore, she clutched tight and wished for a powerful enhancer, or an attacker crest, to appear. A brilliant pattern flared across the orb's surface, right when her flower crest finally showed up. The results flashed an attacker crest, right on cue, exactly what she'd been praying for as her official registration finally sealed. When the whole procedure finally wrapped up, Dorami got officially stamped as a real, full-fledged adventurer for the very first time, Dorami. Tommy was hit with cheers and non-stop congratulations from the guild, and he couldn't believe how warmly they'd shown up for him. Next morning, she bolted to the armory, grinning like crazy at Jade's generous gift, because again, Jade somehow one-upped herself. He shaded the truth about what the shield cost, because he knew she'd shut him down the second she heard it was expensive. Grinning from ear to ear, Dorami clutched her very first shield like it was gold, vowing to get stronger, just like. As Dorami sprinted to grab a weapon, Jade quietly fretted, what if she still wasn't ready enough? Inside the armory, Dorami's hopes crashed. She sifted through weapons and found nothing that lived up to her expectations. Frustration flared in her chest as she swore she'd track down the legendary Dorami Sword version 2, crafted from her own wild imagination. Jade admitted the sword's design wasn't exactly practical, then promised she'd get one specially forged just for him. With his heart racing at the thought, Dorami sprinted to the blacksmith, ready to beg for a custom weapon. The moment she arrived, the blacksmith shut the door on her, rejecting children from the workshop, and her excitement instantly shattered. Harami snapped to the truth. He wasn't scolding her at all. He was fighting words with his apprentice's daughter. The girl begged to help her father, but he snapped back hard again, shutting her down like a door slamming in her face. Jade's eyes widened. This girl's sword craftsmanship was unreal, so refined it looked like a master smith had forged it, and she couldn't help but feel it. She spilled her promise to guard every secret, confessing her love and hunger to get better, even after praising her skills, the blacksmith still slammed the door shut, refusing to let her forge weapons while he was standing there. The blacksmith snapped that Kakashimina's inexperience could get future adventurers killed, and he slammed the door on her help. Kakosha Mina spotted Jade and froze at the shock of seeing him there, while Dorami slipped forward and made her request in a calm, steady voice. Blacksmiths barked at the workers for slacking, but everyone's jaw still dropped when Jade finally showed up. Dorami made it crystal clear the sword wasn't meant for Jade alone. She demanded the girl step in and get involved too. Dorami introduced herself like she was just a kid, then blurted out her real wish. Kazumina had to join in too. The blacksmith spotted Dorami on the spot, his jaw dropping at her legend, because her name and stories had already been flying all across the capital. Dorami didn't hesitate. She officially picked Kakajimna as her blacksmith, trusting her completely even though she was still so young. Dorami snapped with full confidence that she could forge the weapons she truly needed, and the blacksmith listened, wide-eyed. Smith nodded to the motion, handing his daughter a shot, then looked at Dorami and made sure she understood exactly what could go wrong. Kakashimina swore she'd give it everything, determined to never soil her father's name or his craft, and Then she dove straight into designing the sword, insisting on a short blade because Dorami's frame was tiny. She fought to keep the dragon details, then pitched a smarter, more practical design instead. Even after the sketch wowed her, Kakashimina stalled, because she couldn't shake the fear that her father would be better at those kinds of details. She straight up confessed her talents weren't limitless, worried the outcome would come out dull and self-made. Dorami flashed her a confident smile and pushed her to take a chance on herself, because she had the power to believe. She hesitated one last time, but Dorami's calm, steady smile hit harder than any words ever could. Rallying behind Dorami's grit, Kakashimina snapped into focus. If she quit before even attempting, then she'd already lost. She pushed her one more time, insisting she trust herself, because she knew exactly how much faith she truly carried. When Dorami's sweet words hit, she finally understood the truth. She wasn't just any stranger. She was Dorami's very first customer, and the first real chance she'd been given. Fueled by new drive, she swore she'd pour everything into it, so Dorami would never, ever regret trusting her. Their hands clapped together. She officially handed Kajimina the charge, and he snapped back into action, determination blazing again. 2 weeks had slipped by since Dorami sent in her order, and the blacksmith greeted her like she was old news, all smiles and ready to get started. The blacksmith thrust the wrapped sword into her hands, and her heart hammered like it was trying to break free from her chest. Her eyes lit up at the sword's gorgeous design, and she couldn't stop staring at that dragon-shaped hilt like it was pure treasure. Dorami brought Jade the finished weapon and showed it off. Then he nodded, confirming it matched her request perfectly, down to the blade inclusion. With hands shaking like leaves in the wind, she raised the sword, and magic flared along the blade, shimmering bright enough to steal the light. Jade marveled at how razor-sharp that sword was, and Dorami's cheeks flared as he fantasized about mowing down even a slime with pure confidence. Dorami erupted in joy, thanked Kajimina with wide-eyed awe at his incredible craftsmanship, and soaked up her beautiful sunlit surroundings. Kajimina's smile bloomed, her heart warmed by Dorami's words, and she quickly thanked her for trusting her this much. With everything set, Dorami lifted her sword, grinning like she couldn't wait to unleash it on their very first quest. Next, they headed straight for the Capital Guild. Dorami strode up to the counter, mission ready. Dorami hovered at the counter, trembling with nerves, while Jade watched from behind, catching every flicker of her tension and doubt. The receptionist finally snapped her name and called her up. Dorami froze stiff, gripping her form like it could save her, because she knew the moment had arrived. Jade flashed a smile, thinking back to Garnet's razor-sharp professionalism, and she stayed cool as ice while guiding fresh-faced adventurers like Durant. Raimi's Garnet's glimmered, and her gentle expression stayed the same. Her calm presence still poured out warmth like it had all those years ago. As Garnet shot a glance at Dorami, Jade couldn't stop herself from admiring the magnetic vibe Dorami seemed to create just by standing there. Garnet's gentle smile disarmed Jadoff on the spot. His heart sprinted with panic, and that calm, radiant warmth sent him blushing hard. Blushing hard and rattled to the core, Jade swore he'd protect Dorami, praying Garnet could feel how devoted he was standing right there. With crisp instructions, Garnet warned Dorami, "Don't forget, after your mission, bring back the slime's mana stone." Dorami sprinted straight to Jade, practically vibrating with excitement, because her first quest had officially kicked off and pure joy was bursting in every direction. In the blink of an eye, Jade and Garnet traded warm smiles, silently admitting, yeah, they still had each other. A slime shimmered on the horizon, and Dorami, shield clutched tight, tensed up, ready to spring her ambush. Her shoe snapped a twig underfoot, and that tiny crack yanked the slime's attention straight to her. Panicking, Dorami thrust her sword up high, screamed, and charged straight at them from the front. She swung too late, the slime snapped into her first, blasting into her chest and shoulder and leaving her furious and reeling. Dorami clenched her fists so tight her knuckles burned, and she didn't even wait. She unleashed her brand new water magic right then and there. Dorami tore open the sky with water magic, blasting a glowing seal into existence as raw energy roared forward. Her spell hit clean and sharp, so she rode that momentum and lined up one last blast to end it for good. Jade's jaw dropped. This slime didn't just react. It gobbled the water and swelled up in seconds, proving the hydration effect. Repeated strikes battered her until she sagged, her eyes widening as she realized her sword and spells wouldn't cut it, so she'd need a whole new tactic. And just like that, the empowered slime shot forward again. Dorami snapped her shield up with a burst of urgency. With no other way out, Dorami lunged and swung a fearless punch, pouring raw power straight into her fist. The slime lurched backward in midair, and she surged right after it. She slammed forward again with raw, explosive force. They just stared in shock, no magic perks, no tricks, yet Dorami stood her ground by raw, unstoppable will alone. Breathing hard, she dug in and stood her ground. Then her final attack blasted the slime soaring into the hills, and she couldn't stop the tears from streaming down. Her eyes welled up as she turned toward Jade, and pride surged. She declared her first victory. Dorami clutched the mana stone like it was pure treasure. Her first quest was finally over, and now she was ready to tear back into town and keep her journey rolling. She grinned beside Jade, savoring that sweet little treat like it was proof her victory was small, but absolutely real. Jade clocked the way the earned rewards hit different, and Dorami leaned in with shaking excitement, begging to hear where they should go next. They needed potions, so they vowed to thank Swearin, because he once came to Dorami's rescue when she was completely lost. Swearin. She skipped into the apothecary with a bright smile, because not every fight ends with victory. Some end with wounds, healing supplies, and a whole lot of gratitude. Dorami skipped inside, all smiles. Then the moment she saw it, her joy died instantly as fear seized her, because a mysterious woman stepped out, drenched in eerie splatters. Terrified, she demanded answers on the spot, and her thoughts screamed the worst. What if he was already spiraling toward pain or straight into danger? Relief hit Jade the second she recognized the woman, Swiren's grandmother, only here to make sure everything was on track. Once the confusion finally cleared, Dorami spilled the truth. She didn't come this far to wait. She wanted potions right now because she's adventuring. Cuck gave her potions, but he didn't let her get comfortable. He warned that only top-tier supplies are meant to be used with care, not wasted recklessly. While he was scrolling, Ku grilled Dorami for trip ideas, and Dorami pitched Laboon, quiet, scenic, and straight-up peaceful. Breathless, Dorami painted Kamishi's hometown with words while Kuhu listened. Then Jade snapped the conversation to something far more urgent. Jade finally brought up Onyx, the adventurer they'd been hunting, and Kuku's whole demeanor snapped tense and guarded, even with a steady stream of adventurers flooding her shop, she sighed and admitted Onyx hadn't shown up in ages. Then she trailed off mid-sentence. She still remembered his last visit like it was yesterday, especially that strange request he made 12 years ago. Even with the heat blasting him, Onyx grabbed ice and lava potions. Right away, Ku's curiosity flared into suspicion. He tossed out his destination, the Ice Kingdom, like it was nothing, and that one little line stuck with the Ku ever since. Buried under snow year-round, the Ice Kingdom sat miles away, brutal, unforgiving, and so rarely visited that adventurers barely dared to look its way. Jade drifted in silence as Onyx vanished there, and the sting of his departure hit her mind like a fresh wound. She swallowed the shock in silence, realizing her long-lost father had raced north to the Ice Kingdom. Even with the answers finally in hand, her heart stayed heavy as storm clouds, and Jade watched her haunted silence with real worry. Even with danger screaming in his face, Jade mapped out his escape, locked in on the idea of shadowing Onyx all the way into that frozen wasteland. With her feelings crashing over her, she gripped her pendant tight, and the heartbreak of a separation that was coming hit like a silent goodbye. Jade saw the hurt in her eyes and soothed her with a gentle voice, because 12 years apart carved wounds that still burned. Before they split up, Garnet spoke in a gentle voice and promised she'd wait, no matter what, until both of them came back safe. She shoved a pair of Jade, hand-stitched gloves into his hands, made to shield him from the Ice Kingdom's ruthless, freezing cold. Stunned by the sheer craftsmanship, Jade grinned wide when the gloves locked onto him perfectly, and warm comfort flooded his hands. Jade's happiness practically burst off him. He slipped on the gift and grinned with a bright, real smile, like pure joy had taken over with gratitude burning in her eyes. Garnet swore she'd hold on to this memory, no matter what the future threw at her. Dorami's eyes lit up the second she heard she'd get a handmade pair of gloves too. Jade swore she'd finish Dorami's gloves on the road, and she set aside a spool of yarn just for the job. Under the glittering night sky, Garnet said their goodbyes, and then suddenly hesitated when Jade started to walk away. She lunged for her pendant, yanking him to a stop as doubt flickered across her face. Jay spun back, worry written all over him, just before he could even speak. She laced her fingers with his hand, gripping it like the flood of feelings inside her was about to break free. Garnet gripped Jade's hands with white-knuckle force, her voice shaking as she begged him to come back to her safe. Her eyes softened and sparkled with hope, silently pleading with him not to shatter her heart. Jade froze in place, heart slamming as her emotions crashed over her. She couldn't find a single word to answer his quiet, crushing plea. She didn't hesitate, she surged forward, closing the gap between them, and their emotions finally hit absolute peak. Under the moon's cold glow, everything went quiet for a heartbeat. Then they crashed into each other, and he held her like he was keeping a promise only his heart could say. Jade and Garnet stole a quiet, intimate moment together, pressing their foreheads close as if they were sharing secrets without a single word. Their fingers laced together like a vow, sealing that promise under the stars. Then they pulled apart, forced to walk separate paths again. As they walked away, Garnet let out a faint smile, gripping the warmth of their shared promise tight, left. Alone in the quiet, she clasped her hands tight and tried to force the pain back down before it swallowed her whole. Now they're lovers, but the moment they're apart, that hurt still claws at them, because every mile away brings fresh sorrow, even when their love stays strong. Alone beneath the moonlight, Garnet stared into the night and couldn't stop thinking about how razor-close she'd been to kissing Jade just earlier. She gripped her pendant and wondered when the moment would finally come, when she'd find the courage to say what was really in her heart. With no words at all, she swallowed her fear and accepted her limits, then clung to hope that they'd come back safely and fast. By morning, their journey finally kicked off. Jade and Dorami rode out, while Garnet stayed back, staring from the distance. They pushed through endless forests and snow-capped peaks, then slipped onto a freezing trail that led straight to the Ice Kingdom. Just a week into the trip, Dorami couldn't stop trembling when the brutal cold finally crushed through and swallowed her whole. Ahead of them stretched the Ice Kingdom's snowy wasteland, mysterious, brutal, and heartbreakingly beautiful. Winds howled and frost bit hard, and Jade screamed that they needed shelter. Dorami, shivering to the bone, nodded without a second thought. Jade clocked it nearby. She even mapped out the hot spring where they could warm up. The innkeeper flung the door open and beckoned them in, serving up real warmth and a hard-earned place to rest from that brutal northern cold. Dorami grinned and laid out their quest plans, and the innkeeper immediately pressed them for their adventurer status. With the guild nowhere in sight, she lifted her head high and proudly raised her hand to reveal her crest. Even though Dorami was tiny, she puffed up with pride and shouted her attacker, crest, like it was a badge of honor, and the innkeeper couldn't help but admire her fire. With a sharp grin, the innkeeper proudly showed off the 5-petal enhancer crest he'd earned through years of hard-won experience. Age crushed his pace, but his past still roared. Dorami watched in stunned awe, staring at the raw power he couldn't shake. The innkeeper leaned in and told me how the younger villagers had to leave town for work, then pointed straight at the capital as the place to chase real adventuring chances. Jade leaned in close, thanked him with real sincerity, and then started rethinking their next stop with razor-sharp caution. That night every sound went quiet. While Dorami slept like an angel, Jade stayed up in dead silence, eyes locked on the plan, plotting the next move with razor-sharp focus. Studying the map, Jade's eyes widened as she realized the capital sat way beyond those mountains and choking forests. To track Onyx, they'd have to blaze through brutal terrain, where every step crushed their limits. Jade clenched his resolve. No matter what it cost, he was going to hunt down Onyx for Garnet. Clutching the map with white-knuckle grip, he silently begged Garnet to hold on, swearing they'd come back with the answers they needed. 12 years after Onyx kicked off their journey, they finally crashed for the night in a peaceful, snowy village. After clawing through that brutal cold, they finally basked in warmth and started plotting their escape straight toward the royal capital. Both adventurers gushed over how the hot spring felt like a fresh start, and the manager's eyes lit up as he reminisced about the town's wild, better days. The manager laid it out plainly. Young people had fled, and all that was left was an older, dwindling workforce. When Jade heard labor was scarce, they jumped in to help with the lumber work, then pushed right back into their capital-bound journey. Because he knew the risk, the manager snapped that deadly monsters were lurking around the forest where they had to work. Just as worry tried to creep in, Jade's companion stepped forward and said, straight up, that he was a rank 10 adventurer. The manager froze in disbelief because he finally realized Jade was the very hero people in the Sundale Kingdom couldn't stop talking about. His legacy lit a spark in the young villagers, pushing them to chase adventure, without realizing they were setting their own villages on the fast track to decline. Jade swallowed his pride and apologized with his whole heart, and the manager just grinned, thanking him for lighting a spark of hope in the village's youth. And the rumors of Jade's exploits lit a spark in the village youth, driving them to chase life-changing adventure. You were once too scared to step out, but now the manager thanks Jade for lighting that courage in him. Even though Jade chased the journey for a selfish reason, he soon realized his mess of consequences was lighting a fire in everyone else. With pride blazing in his chest, Jade agreed to help. His strength had them all reassured. While they hunted for the right trees, measurements slipped and directions kept going sideways because the daylight was vanishing fast. They had to haul firewood to Yuki out near the village's edge, and that became part of their job. Pushing farther into the woods, they stumbled on a colossal snowman standing all alone, watching them from the shadows like something that didn't belong. Neither of them expected to stumble on a snowman, and the moment it appeared, the quiet forest suddenly felt wrong. Jade charged forward to fell the tree, while she left the others behind to wait and watch her back with sharp, cautious eyes. She glanced back, nerves buzzing, and the snowman looked like it had crept closer, but it made zero sense because snowmen don't move. In total shock, she watched the snowman grow legs and stomp to life, looming menacingly in the snowy forest, and she froze solid. She stared in disbelief, then panic slammed into her as the snowman moved right before her eyes. She panicked, bolted straight to Jade, and spilled the details, how that creature moved like it shouldn't, and how it twisted from lifeless flesh into something that was actually alive. Instead of smashing it, they froze mid-motion, unsure whether that snowman had been crafted by the innkeeper. They hustled back to the chore and picked a massive tree to chop up and haul out as firewood. That friendly snowman snapped into something monstrous and barreled straight at Jade. They finally caught on too late. The snowman had slipped into disguise to conceal its horrifying true form. The monster closed in fast and they snapped into action. Spells flared, calls flew back and forth, and they fought like their lives depended on it. The beast fought her magic tooth and nail, and Jade shot in right then, ready to block the danger before it could strike. Jade didn't hesitate. She sprang forward and smashed a brutal strike right into the monster's rushing body. Jade snapped the snowman's heavy fists aside, darted out of the way, and lined up a brutal counterattack. His brutal punch hit dead on, detonating the whole fight with a flash so bright the world went silent. While they were still basking in the wind, she spotted Jade tucking his injured hand out of sight, like he couldn't hide the pain from the fight. Dorami refused any magical shortcuts and vowed to forge her strength through pure, hard work. After trudging through the snow for what felt like forever, they finally hauled the last of the firewood, finished gathering, and got it all back to the village. Dorami prayed that one day she'd level up enough for Garnet to look her in the eyes and finally proudly acknowledge her transformation. Jade secretly craved Garnet's praise too, remembering how she used to stare at his strength like it was something holy. Garnet's memories still haunted Jade's mind as he and the others kept hauling wood deeper into the forest. At last, they spotted a tiny wooden cabin and sprinted toward it, firewood baskets clutched in their hands then. He snapped his gaze upward as the cabin door groaned open, and someone waiting inside revealed themselves, wrapped. Akasha stood cloaked in a hooded coat, and her sharp voice demanded to know who dared show up at her door. The introductions came fast, but unease stayed behind. Yuki's presence felt miles away and eerily heavy. Her eyes snapped wide, and her face locked in place mid-thought, like she just spotted something she'd buried for years, or something that instantly chilled her bones. Confusion hung in the air like a storm cloud, but no one was hostile. Then they said their job came straight from the innkeeper. That earlier act of kindness, easing the snow, must have tugged at her heart, because for one brief moment, her whole demeanor softened. Warm hospitality hit them like a shock. She welcomed the visitors with milk and shelter, and admitted they didn't show up often at all. Steam curled up from the mug, and for a moment, everything went quiet as they finally started to settle in, heat and all. Yuki kept her hood up, swearing the sensitivity was real, but the whole situation felt wrong, and Dorami couldn't wait to spill her wild adventures, especially her magic practice, then leaned in and grilled Yuki about her quiet life deep in the forest. With pure confidence, Dorami flashed her adventurer badge like a victory flag, and Yuki just froze, staring at it in stunned silence. Reimai opened up about Jade's strength and kindness, begging Yuki to drop her guarded attitude toward them. Jade sensed the tension and nudged Dorami to spill his stories, and while Yuki listened with a polite smile, guarded laughter still bubbled through the room. Yuki's stern, unreadable face finally cracked, like a bright smile bursting through the small wooden cabin. The sunset slid in and they thanked her for everything, the rest, the warm drink, before grabbing themselves and heading out. Yuki didn't say a word, just stared, letting her gaze linger on them as the door eased shut behind the last one. Right when they turned to leave, Yuki snapped their attention, grabbing her sleeve with shaky hands and pulling them back in place. Without a word, she begged them to stay the night, panic and fear flashing behind her eyes.